across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, very good afternoon to you. Just after 1 o'clock on Friday, August the 21st. It's my last day having been here for 2 weeks. Thank you very much indeed for your company. My producer is leaping up and down. He seems thrilled that I'm leaving. Thanks very much, Finley. You're fired. Good afternoon. Thank you very much indeed for your company this afternoon. Let's have a look now, shall we, at what is making the news headlines at this hour. Well, King Charles has made clear Prince Harry will not be his priority. Harry is reportedly set to hold his tongue to regain royal trust, even as a fresh list resurfaces of the times that he and Meghan have criticised Britain. Now, questions are swirling over who will actually foot the potentially millions of pounds security bill for their return, with Meghan now said to be eyeing up a comeback into acting. Lucky us. Britain's soaring welfare bill has forced Chancellor John Healey to borrow more than expected. Benefit payments jumped 7.2% to £30 billion in July alone. Our national debt is closing in on a staggering £3 trillion. And that, of course, piles pressure onto the Chancellor and, of course, the prospect of another tax-raising budget in October. And the Equalities Minister, Bridget Phillipson, has claimed racism and sexism have become normalised in Britain, a remark critics are likely to seize on as yet another example of ministers talking down this great country. And those are the news headlines at this hour. Well, a very good afternoon to you. I hope you're having a lovely Friday. Friday, of course, the day before the weekend. The weekend starts here. I'm delighted to say that joining me this afternoon is Steve N. Allen, comedian and broadcaster. Very nice to see you.
Always a pleasure to see you. How have you been doing?
Yeah, all right, thank you very much. Where are you with a little green screen behind you?
This is my shed. But I've decorated the back of my shed to make it look like that. Yeah.
What
you can't see the lawnmower.
You really can't. You can't see anything, I should think, any garden furniture at all. Look, I mean, are you whooping with celebration? Are there peals of bells for you? Are you dancing in the aisles about the return of Meghan and Harry to the United Kingdom?
Nope. I mean, look, I know there's been a lot of talk about how many millionaires we've lost, but and then technically we'll be gaining 2 millionaires back, but I think most of the money seems to be coming from the UK anyway. It'll be inheritance at some stage, won't it? But look, I don't care either way. I wish I could care, but this is just rich people who are moaning about their family loads, going to be moving to the Cotswolds probably to hang out with other rich people who moan about their lot. All of it just winds me up. And it's not, look, there might be many an argument about how bad the British press can be. I'm sure there's some solid arguments there. But two things can be right at the same time. The press can be annoying. These people can be annoying. So now, if anything, I'm upset about the fact that the rate at which we will have Meghan and Harry stories will probably go up.
I would agree with you. And actually, I was enjoying not actually having to read much about Meghan and Harry. Well, the King has made it clear that the Prince of Wales and the future of the royal family remain his priority, even as Meghan and Harry return to the UK. Now, the King, and I get this, is naturally pleased, of course, with the opportunity to see more of his family, both in a private capacity and a personal capacity as well. However, this is the really good bit. He was with William, apparently, when he heard the news. I'd love to have seen William's face at that particular point. He's insisted privately that the work of the institution will not change and that William and Catherine will come first and the Duke and Duchess will remain private individuals in accordance with the late Queen's belief. And if you remember, the late Queen was absolutely very, very firm and strict on this. You cannot be half in and half out. You're either in or you're out.
Yeah, and it makes so much sense because half in, half out will clearly just mean not pulling your weight, not doing the work, but cashing in on the brand. And I think they kind of do that already. The fact that we're still calling them the Duke and Duchess, and that's the brand. It feels like it's a brand that's owned by the United Kingdom rather than the couple. Do you know what I mean? To go to America and have websites based on it. But we shouldn't be surprised. I think the King is making the right decision. His job is to run the monarchy and doing so well with the royal family. And I'll tell you what, actually, we shouldn't be surprised that William will come first because of all the families where all the rest of us can pretend we don't have favourite kids. But when you've got one of them who is first in line to running the country, it's understandable that he might be slightly the favourite. He's literally going to have your job. You have to train them to do it. And the other one went off and wrote a book called Spare. So, if anything, they've all played their part in making sure we know which one is first and which one isn't.
Well, I actually think William and Catherine have behaved impeccably, actually. They have done exactly what is meant of them. They have carried out their charitable commitments and so on. Now, the King and Queen hosted the Sussexes at Highgrove, their country house in Gloucestershire. It was a private family occasion. I'd like to know when Harry and Meghan actually decided to come back to the UK. Now, Meghan, after that trip, if you remember, she posted pictures on the Instagram of the stay, including an image of Harry, Archie and Lilibet in the grounds of Althorpe as well. Now, apparently at that point, they hadn't made clear that they were coming back to the United Kingdom. And so obviously this has evolved. Now, the other point to this story is that William and Catherine come first, but the other part is that apparently the Duke of Sussex has promised to hold his tongue. And you mentioned there the book, and of course we've seen that, and the fact that he's been wailing about how dreadfully they've been treated here in the United Kingdom. He's promised he will no longer talk about private family matters. Thank goodness we can breathe a sigh of relief about that. And as you know, they've been giving interviews to anyone who will listen. They did the Oprah thing. He published the memoir. Apparently, according to the advisors, he's not going to do long-form television interviews, and I think we can all breathe a sigh of relief, don't you?
But have we got another guarantee that they won't be making protracted documentaries about themselves on Netflix? Because that was the other side of it.
Well, that
like
and cooking.
15-parter.
Yeah.
The cooking, yeah. And all, yes, if we could not hear more about the jam, which is not a jam. Isn't it annoying that she has a fruit spread which costs more than the Duchy of Cornwall jam? So it's both not a jam and not royal, and yet she charges more.
Is that right? So it's a fruit spread. What is a fruit spread?
It's about 17 quid. No, I've no idea the difference, but somehow she wasn't allowed to technically call it a jam.
OK, I'll have to look into the difference between a fruit spread and a jam. You've left me there. Now, it's interesting, though, because then we come to another big part, which we talked about yesterday, which is security. Now, you'll remember RAVEC, which is the organisation responsible for looking after high-profile people in this country. Former Prime Ministers, for example, of which we have many, I think 7 in the last 10 years. And they have made the decision that Harry and Meghan don't get security provided by the state. Now, I do wonder whether that will change with them coming back. Now, one of the other problems, and having met some of the security with former Prime Ministers when I've been to meetings, we don't have enough specialised officers anymore because there have been so many Prime Ministers that they've run out of, you know, the close protection that they need.
We have one industry that's booming then. Wow, we found
very
it.
much so.
I actually, look, as much as people can enjoy getting stuck into the moaning about Harry and Meghan, this is one area where I think sense has to prevail. One of the big reasons why he would be at risk in terms of security is simply the family into which he was born. He didn't make that decision. He will always be related. He might not be a working royal, but it's the being a royal that is a big part of his security risk. There is no nutter out there who thinks, I'm going to do something crazy. Oh, actually, no, he doesn't. It is not a working royal. I'll leave him out. So the security, I think, is valid. It's a different question when he was living elsewhere and visiting. But even then, I actually think it's better for this nation to have him protected because it would cause such a big problem. If he's living here, I think they require the protection. The big sticky wicket was about whether a private individual should be able to pay for police-level security. And we have that as not a rule, and it's good that we didn't change it. But I think now we just have to stomach the $5 million, is it, that it will cost? There are bigger wastes of money out there, and I think it would be terrible if something happened. So the security, I'm all for, and especially if that means that we don't hear anything
there's
about.
another part to that, isn't there? Because of course there have been 5 alleged plots against Harry. One of them, particularly, at least one of them, was an Al Qaeda inspired plot. And of course, then he is obviously the king's son, and therefore he could be held captive, for example, and therefore be a ransom piece for the king, for the royal family. So in many ways, there is a very strong argument now he's back on British soil that he needs protecting.
Yeah, definitely. And I know it goes against the narrative that we often enjoy, you know, because there's a big long list of times they've said mean things about the UK. So as a resident of the UK, it's quite fun to point them out and the hypocrisy therein if they're coming to move back here. But security just moves into a different area, doesn't it? It's not the churlish, like, pointing out someone's flaws. Security is different. I don't wish harm to anyone, including anyone in our royal family. So no. I think it is a cost that we just have to stomach, even though should then be allowed to point out all of their failings at the the same time.
Well, I mean, our rather pathetic Prime Minister said, when he was asked about security, he said it's a private matter, but it's not a private matter because we're going to have to pay for it. So I'm really sorry. You're the Prime Minister. I know you're not very good at actually announcing anything or having any sort of direction or anything, but at least give us an answer. Should they have protection or not have protection? Because you're the Prime Minister.
Yeah. Well, he's probably too busy up in the north where he at some point there'll be a separate king of the north. I think that we're heading back to the old way that England was run. Mercy is probably getting all excited
feudal
right
system.
Now. We're slowly heading back there, even though we don't think we are. Yeah. No, you're right. He should be stepping up on this. It is an issue where they live, where they have the kids in school, all of that private when it comes to security. As you say, because it's not just about the impact of security on Harry. The fact that you would be impacting his father, who is our monarch. So, of course, it becomes a national issue.
So then the big question is, why are they coming back? Now, today, we should learn how much Harry has to pay. Do you remember in this court case, which is today, he will find out how big the bill is in terms of legal costs in that High Court case against the Daily Mail's publisher. So we've got Elton John and various others. They sued Associated Newspapers Limited over allegations of unlawful information gathering. The cases were dismissed, and the size of this payout, and certainly what he's on the hook for, could be millions of pounds.
Yeah, and that is a worry because that means he will then go back to Netflix and say, no, we will make more shows because if he needs the money, it's got to come from somewhere. And it's a rather embarrassing situation. That doesn't make much sense, though, does it? Like, if I tried to sue a big chunk of the UK's press, lost, I'd probably stay away from the UK for a while because you expect... don't anger the beast before you then live right next to it with its paparazzi photographers. So something in there we don't know. Something doesn't make sense.
I would agree with
articles. There's something talking about the amount of tax you pay based on where you live for a while. Apparently they've hit exactly the right time to do the lowest thing. My personal theory, which has no evidence, but that never stops me before, is the divorce laws in the UK are nowhere near as punitive as they are in California. Just throwing that out there as a thing.
Oh, that's a good one. I haven't read that one before, so obviously that's yours.
It's based on nothing. Exactly, it's based on nothing other than, isn't it intriguing to think it?
So let's throw that out there. Could they be getting divorced? Is he going to pay out a lot of money? Also, today we learned that she, and lucky us, may well return to acting. Of course, she was known for her role in Suits. I think she was in it for 7 years or something like that. I never watched a single episode. But anyway, she was in that. She's done various things. Actually, she was on something like The Price is Right or something like that, where she held up a board of prizes or whatever. So it's possible that she's got a big acting role, and that may well... Because Harry's wanted to come back for a while, I think, and then maybe this was the clincher of the deal in that she got an acting role and thought, right, I'll go.
Yeah, maybe. Or, as you say, because she knows how to do the lifting of prizes, maybe the Wheel of Fortune's coming back.
Oh, that's right, it was the Wheel of Fortune. Sorry, you're right.
I'm not sure if it was, but we don't have the Wheel of Fortune. I'm sure. Was it?
Yeah,
it was. Lucky guess. Stephen Mulhern's bound to be willing to host it, so we should have it back, and she can point at prizes. And look, fair play to her. If she does actually have some acting work, good. I'd rather people have gainful employment. If you don't like, I always say this, regardless of what we're talking about, comedians doing jokes you find offensive, films that you don't like, there is no obligation to watch. So absolutely good luck to her. I hope she has a great acting career. If you like her, watch it. If you don't like her, don't watch it. We'll make a little bit of scratch on the tax from anyone being gainfully employed. I'm all up for that.
I think one of the other things is that I think they've forgotten just how vile they were about the United Kingdom. If you look back at what the allegations, she talked about the stoic British approach to handling emotions is really damaging. She also said the British tabloids were out to destroy her. She said, I can never do the school pick-up and drop-off, even though, by the way, William and Kate managed to do the school pick-up and drop-off, and I would argue that they're actually higher up the pecking order. But anyway, and then also Prince Harry said the royal family had an unconscious bias on race, if you remember, which I think pretty devastated the royal family as well. I mean, they seem to have forgotten that they have thrown all this stuff around. Also, Meghan said in that Oprah Winfrey interview, they talked about when she was pregnant with Archie, there were concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be. And as you remember, there was that peachy quote from the late Queen, recollections may vary.
Yeah, indeed. And this is what we like about the royal family, never explain, never complain, which actually, if more people had that, but then again, that would be a stiff upper lip attitude, which is apparently ruining all of us. That's the thing. And not that the more I see clips of the Oprah interview, More blame needs to be on Oprah as well, because she really doubled down on all of the shocked face that a member of the family might ask a question about what a child might look like. I've married someone who's considerably darker than I am, and I have a gingerness in the beard, and we have 2 kids. And during that, we always joked about, I wonder if they'd inherit any of the gingerness, or have I selected well enough to make sure that, I've got enough dominant genes around me that the kids never have to have this. That's the questions you have in families. And even if you watch that clip again, there's really nothing that points out that there's a racist issue. And when they asked Prince Harry about it, he was just saying, I'll never go into details. That's not evidence, is it?
No, I mean, there's one other thing that I don't think they factored into this, which is I'm not sure how favourably the British public will see their return to the United Kingdom. When you look at the poll that was released yesterday by YouGov, 33% of the respondents in this country are against them coming to this country, 45 are undecided and probably don't care, and only 20% are for. I'm not sure this is going to be quite the easy ride they thought it might be.
Yeah, although I imagine they'll be surrounded by the kind of people who will be, protecting them from any reality. If they do, because the rumour is they're moving to the Cotswolds, which means you get Ellen DeGeneres is still there for a while. Other millionaires have properties there. Jay-Z and Beyonce own a little bit of land nearby. So I'm sure they can all live in their own bubble, which is kind of fine. That's what millionaires do, you'd imagine. If you're that rich, why would you deal with the harsh reality that we all have to face? I'm sure they'll be patting themselves on the back and convincing each other that fruit spreads are better than jams, because that's the world they need to live in.
It's the world we all live in. Let's just be clear. Thank you ever so much for the moment. Let me just ask you this afternoon, do you care whether Harry and Meghan are coming back to the United Kingdom? What's your reaction to their return to this glorious country? And also, I think this is a much more pressing issue. Should we cough up £5 million to pay for their security, given that they disappeared off for 7 years and now it suits them to come back, and now suddenly we'll be on the hook for the £5 million to pay for their security? The number 0344 499 1000. Those calls charged at the national rate. You can text the word talk on 87722, and you can message us on X as well at talkTV. After the break, we'll go through more top stories. Don't go anywhere. This is Talk.
We have to stand up to the French. We have to be much tougher. We have to stop. I mean, the pull factor is huge, but even without the pull factor, there are going to be people who, want to come across that bit of ocean and come to us. And I just think, once again, we do a lot of talking about it, and Andy Burnham, every time he's interviewed, says, oh, yes, but there's fewer boats coming. There may be fewer boats coming, but they're actually bigger boats, and they're holding just as many people. I think the money we're giving to France is unbelievably big for what they're doing for us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, this is Talk. I'm joined by Stephen Allen, comedian and broadcaster from his shed somewhere in the United Kingdom. Now, let's move on and talk about politics, which obviously I think probably is more appealing to people in this country than Harry and Meghan. But so Suella Braverman, this is quite interesting, actually. There's a big scrap over the centre-right or the right of politics, and Suella Braverman has said Reform UK will not make a deal with Restore Britain or the Conservatives before the next election. Now, the former Tory Home Secretary Secretary who defected from the Tories to Reform UK, told Restore voters to get real and support reform. Now, if you remember, there was some discussion with Rupert Lowe. He then did this sort of prime ministerial video where he basically said these are the 5 conditions for us in Restore to join forces with Reform UK. But as part of that, he said Suella Braverman and Robert Jenrick cannot ever be in a future cabinet. I mean, what's your position on this? The fact is that at the moment, when you look at the polling, Labour is still amazingly, and I don't quite know how they're doing this, is still at 25 points. Reform UK now back in the top at 26. But, you know, that isn't a convincing win. It's not a convincing margin.
No, I suppose, look, this particular conversation about deals, she's right because of the terminology. She says before the election. Yes, this is the way it has to be, isn't it? You can't have pacts agreed beforehand, otherwise people change where their vote will go, presuming if you vote here, you'll be bringing this with you. So, look, I don't think there's ever going to be a pact between Reform and Restore simply on a... Should there be? Well, probably not, because of the mismatch and the fact that the personalities don't lock together. What you'll end up there with... So, in a nerdy way, I need to go back to my my nerdy science days. You've got anti-bonding electrons, right? You can get electrons in a molecule that rip a molecule apart. And I think that's exactly what you've got there. You've got some forces. If you've got Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe together, at some point, something will happen where the personalities will just click out and it would rip apart. And that would be a shame, because it would cause the kind of upset in politics that is not to do with policy. What an absolute waste of our human endeavour. Now, whether Reform and the Conservatives could work together, it has to be after an election, not before.
But you see, here's the thing, because Reform UK has taken a lot of former Labour voters, and I think many of them would think this is absolutely unacceptable to get into bed with the Conservative Party. Now, the other thing I would say is that we all worked in the European Parliament together. I was there with Rupert and Nigel. If we could get on then, why can't we get on now?
It feels like things have been said, and, you know, I suppose, well, it seems upset has been caused. That's what it feels like. There's things... Back then, we never heard of the personalities and any personal insults that might have been happening in the European Parliament. You had the enemy of my enemy is a friend. You had your other focus. Whereas now, it seems that there's just been this schism, and to try and fit those bits together will cause more problems trying to lock them back in. I know what you mean about if you vote for a party and then they do a deal afterwards, you will be upset. But that's the way it seems to work with our coalitions. I don't think there were many Lib Dem voters that were voting Lib Dem thinking, fingers crossed, I hope they team up with the Tories, let's roll these dice. So that's how it happens, is it? There will always be some voters on a post-election deal, because the deal is always sold as being pragmatism. We simply had to do this deal, otherwise we couldn't form a government. Whereas beforehand, why would you bother having a pact with a party beforehand? Just don't have the party then. If you're not going to stand on your own 2 feet pre-election, then you don't deserve to be voted for.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very fair point. Also, I think positioning may change the closer we get to a general election, as minds are focused and it looks like the Labour Party could well win the next election. Then I think people around the country may actually think, crikey, we need to do something about it. Talking about trying to do things about something that's very important, this is a shocking statistic. Britain's soaring welfare bill has forced John Healey to borrow even more money to fund this. So the gap between tax receipts and spending resulted in a £1.8 billion deficit in July. Our national debt is now almost £3 trillion. I mean, it's absolutely insane. And when you look at benefit payments, they climbed by 7.2%. They're now standing at 30 billion. Our welfare, basically, the benefit budget now, a year, is 333 billion quid. It is unsustainable. It's ridiculous. And yet, any government that tries to actually make some changes to that, I mean, the Labour government under Starmer, you then got massive kickback from the backbenchers. So something has to happen. We are broke. We are going to go bust.
Yeah, this is what I don't understand. Even if you're of a mindset where you think the nation should be some sort of benevolent benefactor, you need it to have money. You can't bankrupt a nation if you want the nation to be funding things. And there are so many of these little milestones that we've gone through already, when income tax take was lower than the spend on benefits, and all of these things where you think, something's not right about the future of this if we keep ploughing down this road. I know the numbers get so big you think, oh, what harm could it do? But eventually it does harm, doesn't it? We're living in this weird started, Wile E. Coyote's gone off the cliff and we're looking down, but we've not started to fall yet. If we don't do something about it, that's the way it's going to go. You know, everyone talks about the Laffer curve, right?
Yes.
Which is, there's an area on that curve where if you increase tax, you'll get more tax take. And then you get to a peak, a point of inflection, to be nerdy again, and then beyond that, the more you increase it, the less you get. Now, there'll be a similar curve for borrowing. Sure, if you're borrowing nothing, borrow a little bit, do a bit of investing on infrastructure, and you'll make some hay from it. But if you max out your borrowing, the more you do, the interest rates go up, servicing the debt becomes such a big spend, it's not worth it. So there'll be a curve that fits that. We've got the highest tax take since World War II, so we know where we are on that curve. We're up at $3 billion, so we know that we can't be borrowing to try and help this problem. It has to be cutting. It's the only other lever to pull now. So even that shouldn't be ideological. It's just practical. The only thing a government can do is really look at this spend before it bankrupts us.
But you see, the Labour government isn't practical. Are you worried about the budget in October? Because I am.
Yeah. I was worried when that headline, like day 3 or 4 of Andy Burnham getting the gig, and I think the front page of the Times said, Andy Burnham says there's movement on tax. And I thought, yes. Flick the newspaper, quick, read the details. And he meant movement up.
Yeah.
Ooh, that makes no sense. We can't, if we were such a low tax economy, then fair enough, you could increase it a little bit. But where we are right now, it's going to come back to bite us in the backside even more. Taxation stunts the economy and borrowing is taking from future economies. None of these things make sense if we want to have enough money to actually pay benefit bill. I mean, that, by benefits, obviously it's a pejorative term. The welfare state also includes pensioners. If you want to have enough money to fund pensioners, you have to have a working economy.
And of course, they don't want to touch the triple lock. That would be destructive, I think, for any government currently. And something has to give. Let's just move and talk about something we've talked about all week, which is immigration. This is an absolutely shocking story. So these are tourists in Spain, not very far away. They're in La Manga, which is a very nice part of Spain, you know, where people go to play tennis and golf and all the rest of it. Well, dozens of migrants, whilst people were sunbathing, dozens of migrants stormed a beach. 60 migrants jumped from a speedboat on Cala del Bajo beach in Murcia on Wednesday, and the tourists literally packed everything up, their towels, and did a runner. As you can see on screen here, look, this small boat, well, it's not a small boat, is it? And then all these migrants jump off the boat, run towards you as you're rubbing sun cream into yourself, and people did a runner because they're so frightened about what's going to happen. Now, to be fair to the Spanish authorities, and I'm not often nice to them, they arrested 45 men, 2 women, 15 boys, and they have been detained, which is what we should be doing, is it not?
Yeah, if we have good weather, we might have more people sunbathing, which will be our only defence of our south coast. There is a chance that beach towels might be our best defence. Of course, people ran away. Of course, it's scary. And that's not even judgmental, isn't it? Because if this were a news story about some form of attack happening, it would have looked exactly the same up to this point. So it's understandable that people saw this thinking, I don't know which way this is going to go. You don't know what kind of people are jumping in the water and making their way towards you. So, of course, the response was understandably to protect yourself. It is worrying, and you're right about the size of the boats. It's becoming more and more of an official operation. It's made me start to think that gang, in the phrase smash the gangs, is giving us the wrong idea. Gang makes you think of about 7 people hanging out of a weekend. Yeah. This is an organised industry. So we're at war with an industry. We need to be upping our game.
Well, that's right. And actually, I think this will focus minds in Europe, actually, as they see that their own coastlines are being invaded. At the moment, it seems that it's a British problem and the French. But to be fair, again, there's another story doing the rounds today, which is the French have actually managed to intercept some boats. I mean, unless we are very, very swift and we are determined and we use force, they will keep coming. And all the left-wing liberals don't seem to understand that.
Well, yes, but also even if we are swift and we use force, they will keep coming. We had a problem back in the day with people crossing in the back of lorries. We put steps in place to end that.
We did.
And it was drastically reduced, and then boat crossings happened. Well, you can try and stop boat crossing from Calais, and then you hear the boat crossings have simply just moved further out. There will always be a way in which people try to get to the UK if the incentive is there. And again, this shouldn't be a left-right issue. It is not right to make people risk their life because you are showing a bit of ankle. You are tempting people with too many pull factors. It is indeed immoral to be letting people think, oh, if you make it to the UK, look at the things that are on offer, and they are dying because of it. So we do need to be looking at the pull factors. Here's what I don't get. Emmanuel Macron told Starmer, sort out your pull factors. France in general is saying, look, we can keep doing all we can, but the pull factors are going to be the problem. Andy Burnham started to make noises about it back in his first few weeks when he was looking at the polls, looking at the research, what do people want to talk about. Until someone actually grasps that nettle and stops the pull factors being the big issue, use all the force you want, but you'll keep slowly losing this until we solve the core issue.
Yeah. I want to move on to an absolutely shocking story. Do you remember the infected blood scandal? This was HIV and hepatitis, which was in the 1970s and the 1990s, all the way through all of that. And basically, people contracted hepatitis and HIV through contaminated blood given by the NHS. Well, this is a shocking story because bereaved spouses of infected blood victims have been told to return their compensation. So they were given an interim payment of £10,000. And then suddenly they got sent a letter which essentially says the government then sent these letters saying, unfortunately, you are no longer eligible for the bereavement lump sum. You shouldn't have received the payment. Can we have it back, please? I mean, what are they thinking?
It's wrong on so many levels. You know, if I accidentally pay a company too much money, that's it. They've got the money. So it's bizarre that the government thinks they've got the right to it. They made the error. The money's in someone else's bank account. That's hard cheese, really, but no, because the government, they are actually claiming it. But here's the thing as well, it's not loads of people, is it? It's like a handful of, like 12 people or something like that. Well, just pay it's your error. The government should realise the amount of money it would cost them in comparison to the bad PR that this will give you. It would be worth stomaching it. The money is wasted.
But also on a human level, come on. You know, you've lost your spouse or your husband or whatever, and you are still grieving. And suddenly they changed the rules, by the way, because the rules changed so only those whose partners died after 2017 could receive the compensation, not before. I mean, we seem to give away a lot of money to foreign nationals and to things that actually we shouldn't be giving money to. What about actually looking at people in this country? And charity begins at home.
Yeah. And yes, exactly, the moral issue. The idea that not only are people going through this, but if you give someone 10 grand and then like 5 years later decide to take it away, they've not got that sitting in the bank. You don't know. You could be really putting someone through financial hardship because of your error, not because of their error. And so the idea that you wouldn't somehow find a way of doing this the right way. Government wastes money left, right and centre. There'll be some sort of project that never gets off the ground, or some research, some listening project will probably cost more than this.
Yeah.
And what they could... This is way less than the security of Prince Harry as well. And
way
yet
less.
They're still trying to clamber it. Was it 4.5 billion went on waste or dodgy contracts during COVID?
Yeah.
They're the kind of figures we're talking about, and yet 10 grand to these people, oh no, we'll get that back.
Well, and also this is very reminiscent of the post office scandal, isn't it? The Horizon scandal, where obviously then the sub-postmasters and mistresses, they were the ones in the dock. And again, it was a computing error. I mean, it just seems, it beggars belief. And actually, I think sometimes the British state needs to just show a bit of humility and a bit of humanity.
Yeah. Good luck hoping for that. It feels like... I love that you're an optimist still.
Well, really good to talk to you. Thank you ever so much, Steve. Have a great weekend in your shed. Steve N. Allen, their comedian and broadcaster. Lots of messages coming in. I want to talk about Harry and Meghan. I don't know whether you want to talk about that. Are you bothered? Are you bothered that they're coming in? What about the £5 million that we're going to stump up to actually look after them? 0344 499 1000. Also, I think actually one of the biggest stories is the migrants coming across on the beach to Spain whilst people are on holiday in La Manga. How would you feel if you're sitting there with your family trying to enjoy a holiday and suddenly 62 migrants jump off a boat and run towards you? Let me know your thoughts on that as well. 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222 and message us on X as well at talkTV. This, of course, is talkTV.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Harry and Meghan are coming home. Aren't we lucky? Well, the King has made it clear that the Prince of Wales and the future of the royal family remain his priority after Meghan and Harry gatecrashed and said they were coming back to the UK. Look, I mean, the King is obviously naturally pleased that his son is coming back and the family. Now, interestingly, of course, William was with the King, apparently, when he found out, and I should think his face was total thunder. Joining me now is Richard Fitzwilliam, who is a royal commentator. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
What's your reading of this? Because, I mean, here we go again. Harry and Meghan have spent the last few years telling us, everyone, how dreadful the UK is and that we're endemically and systematically racist and the royal family is a terrible place. And then we've done books and we've done Netflix series and Spotify. They've been called grifters. And now, of course, they're coming home.
Now, as you say, they're coming home, but it's a very mixed blessing for the royal family. And I think you're absolutely right to have stressed that naturally William and his family are the future of the monarchy. And of course, their wishes take priority. And quite frankly, as far as I know, they haven't spoken for years, reportedly. William doesn't trust the Sussexes. He doesn't because, you mentioned, I mean, we had Oprah. Very damaging. We had the Netflix series, Harry and Meghan, mocking the Commonwealth. Very damaging. And then we had his memoir, Spare, which quite honestly was absolutely pathetic if you think of some of the things it was included, from penile frostbite to losing his virginity at a field. But there were some serious attacks on members of the royal family, not to mention the interviews, which never seemed to cease. The problem, I think, is that they have not done well financially in the United States. Clearly, they've got quite a lot of money because there's the house in Montecito, another one in Portugal, and apparently one somewhere in Britain. There is a security issue still to be sorted. But I think unquestionably what must happen is that they must be very, very carefully watched, because otherwise they start becoming the story. Because one thing they have done successfully, people know who they are and they quite enjoy following them, love them or hate them. The problem then is that practically every private or official royal engagement from now on, journalists, once they've arrived and in situ, will bear in mind the fact that are they there, were they asked, or should they? Been asked. So it becomes a circus, the very last thing the monarchy ought to be.
And you're absolutely right in that, of course. And Harry has promised to keep his mouth shut. He says, I'm not going to do long-form interviews.
Well, I said most certainly think he should. Good Lord, what does he think this is? I mean, it's not some perpetual conference where the Sussexes think that they've got the right to sound off on whatever they like and never answer for it. Never.
I agree with you. I mean, look, there seem to be no consequences for the two of them. In many ways, actually, when you look at the polling, most people don't really care. And if they do care, a lot of people don't want them to come to this country. I mean, when that wedding took place, I remember thinking, wow, this is a brave new era for the monarchy. This is a true modern ceremony. And I think it was very, very uplifting. And, of course, at the same time, William and Catherine have behaved impeccably, as far as I can see. They have upheld all the traditions of the monarchy. He is preparing to be king. We know the current king isn't particularly well. And I would think the last thing he wants is his brother interrupting that and damaging the prospects of actually retaining the monarchy in this country. And many other countries, of course, have got rid of their royal families.
I guess, though, fortunately, we have 13 which still have King Charles, the head of state, and long may that continue. Though I thought it was an impertinence, since you mention it, for them to go on a faux royal tour to Australia. I mistakenly thought that all they'd intended was would the King open Invictus next year. They wanted a great deal more, and clearly this is linked with the Spencer. It explains old Spencer commemorating 29 years since Diana's tragic death, not 30 by the release of his biography next month. That explains it. I couldn't understand it. No, this is going to be really problematic. because they become the story. And then Easter, Christmas, official engagements, half in, half out, question mark.
Well, of course, they've said you can be half in and half out, haven't they? I mean, what, in your view, though, why, having spent all this time being so rude about the United Kingdom and the royal family and the ladies in waiting and everything and the questions about the baby and the colour of the skin of the baby and so on and so on, why are they coming back? Is it because they have a huge tax bill which is being put around? That's one proposition. Secondly, that Harry missed home. Thirdly, that she's got an acting career here. I wonder also whether they've worked out that actually living in California is pretty soulless and there isn't, you know, having lived there for 6-7 years, it's pretty vacuous. Or is it actually because the King's not very well?
Possibly a mixture of several of those things. People think, of course, of the King's health, and we know he's battling cancer. Also, Harry is an exile. Exiles do sometimes long for home, and that may be part of it. But also, I think the failure for them to become A-listers after 6 years in the United States, I think that and their lack of popularity there, though they have got this extraordinary power of their brand. I cannot dispute that, and that makes it so difficult for the royal family to deal with it. They didn't expect it. And why on earth was King Charles only told on Sunday? I thought he and Harry kept in touch by telephone. I thought they'd seen, well, the family saw the King and Queen. Why didn't they mention it then? After all, they must have known because they were getting schools for their children.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
It doesn't make any sense. And then also, just in terms of that, given they're going to be private citizens and we think living in the Cotswolds or wherever, is there anything the palace can do to ensure they behave themselves when they come back to the United Kingdom?
If only we had a magic wand that would do that. They never explain. They explain nothing. I mean, you could ask Harry why he didn't meet Thomas Markle before the marriage. It made no sense either. They don't explain Meghan is always holier than thou. The facts are that this is, however, a shock move. I couldn't believe it when I heard. So we'll see. The royals, you have keep calm and carry on as a motto. Well, they'll certainly need to do precisely that.
Yeah. I mean, just looking back, and I was fortunate, I knew the boys when they were very young, and I don't understand what happened between them because they were incredibly close. I think Diana particularly instilled great values in both of those kids, and I knew that because of the job I was doing at that time working on children's television, and yet we've got this enormous schism. Is it entirely driven by Meghan?
I don't think so. I think if you read the relevant passages in Spare, I think that we didn't see, it's rather like this creation of the Fab Four, which was nonsense, including Harry and Meghan and William and Catherine. It was a disaster, of course. And I think we didn't pick up on the fact that there was a rivalry, apparently, according to Spare, between them, that was certainly not healthy. I think he resented being a Spare, and now we know. Although, of course, it's had extra twists in what has happened subsequently. There's no doubt at all. But I mean, the facts are that William must be absolutely outraged by the impertinence of this. But it is audacious, and I've no idea where it's going to lead. It could lead to some form of reconciliation in the 30th year after Diana died, but it could also lead to all sorts of trouble.
I think you're right. Richard, really good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Richard Fitzwilliams there, royal commentator. Your thoughts, please. What's your reaction to Harry and Meghan coming back? Is it going to spell trouble for the royal family? Also, for me, who's paying for this security? £5 million is a lot of money. But then equally, the circumstances have changed because he's back and therefore he's on British soil, which is very different to being on US soil. And there are active and credible threats against him and, of course, against the royal family as well. so should we pay for that? And then also, what is their modus operandi? Why are they coming back? Is it because they don't have any money? Is it because of the tax bill? Is it because she wants to act? Is it because Harry misses his family? Is it because the King isn't very well? Is it a mixture of all of those? Your thoughts, 0344 499 1000. Also, tell me what your views are on the boat of migrants jumping off on that Spanish beach whilst people were trying to sunbathe. I mean, many people still on holiday at the moment on Spanish beaches. Could it happen to you? This is Talk.
We have to stand up to the French. We have to be much tougher. We have to stop. I mean, it is the pull factor is huge, but even without the pull factor, there are going to be people who, you know, want to come across that bit of ocean and come to us. And I just think, once again, you know, we do a lot of talking about it, and Andy Burnham, every time he's interviewed, says, oh yes, but there's fewer boats coming. There may be fewer boats coming, but they're actually bigger boats and they're holding just as many people. I think the money we're giving to France is unbelievably big for what they're doing for us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk, 1349 1022 on Friday. Ian's on the line from Bridge End. Good afternoon, Ian.
Hello, David. Pleasure to speak to you.
And you as well. Now, what's your take on all of this massive soap opera that's going on?
Well, I wonder if you agree with me. Harry has departed before he was deported for fiddling his immigration visa.
Great point.
That's what I think. Yeah, it's all very hush-hush and rush-rush, isn't it? Seems to be.
Yeah, and of course we're talking about the fact that he admitted in the book to taking drugs, and again, that would go down very poorly with the federal authorities, and of course they may well revoke his visa on the back of that. Do you think there's more to this? I mean, I'm not entirely sure that Harry and Meghan are altruistic. I'm not sure they're coming back for the family. I think they're coming back for themselves. So therefore the question is it because she's got a job? Yes, it may be the visa. I think there may be financial issues there as well. They're running, I imagine, I don't know whether they bought the houses without mortgages. And then, of course, they're coming back to the UK. They're then expecting security. At the moment, they're paying for their own security, I think, in California.
That's right, yes. And, of course, now they've come straight back. They didn't come via Canada this time of day. So we'll be, I'm sure we'll end up having to lash out for them, whatever they say about it being a private matter, and the King will accommodate their security. I'm sure the taxpayer will be left on the hook as usual.
I would agree with you. Where do you sit on this? So 33% of the public are against them coming back, 45% are undecided, and 21% are for. So what's that? Sort of 78% against or really don't care?
I know. Well, you know, we've got enough of a migrant problem as it is, isn't it? We don't need any more of that.
Very well said, Ian. Thank you very much. Have a lovely weekend. Mark's on the line from Lincolnshire. Good afternoon.
Hi there, David.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks very much indeed.
Yeah, just on this notion what Suella Braverman has come out with about Restore voters getting behind reform.
Yeah, what do you think to that? So Suella Braverman is essentially saying to Restore voters, don't waste your vote, vote for Reform UK.
Well, I'm a Restore member, and and I wouldn't touch reform with a barge pole, if I'm honest.
Okay, why is that?
I'm certainly not going to listen to Suella Braverman.
Why? Because she came from the Tory party?
Yeah, 3 million migrants come into the country, yeah. But a bit of a problem with that. Sarah Jenrick and all the others that Reform happily took in and managed to sell to their voters, that was apparently a great thing, which it just literally isn't. You don't fix things by bringing in the people that broke it in the first place.
So just playing devil's advocate, of course, there is a massive difference between Reform and Restore. Restore has, 25 councillors. Reform has 2,342. Reform has 8 members of Parliament. Restore has 1.
Yeah, that's very much the case. We're a 6-month-old party, David.
Yeah.
It took Reform 2 years to start getting,
Actually, longer. It did. I knew because I was there. I mean, it took longer for Reform to get to. I mean, it's taken 7 years.
Well, exactly. If you want to get really technical about it, but they started. They kind of won their first council seats, I think, back in 21 or 22 or something.
That's about right.
It was about 2 years from its transition over from the Brexit Party. So a lot of people will happily criticise Restore and say, I've read some comments today on X, people basically saying, this was Restore's litmus test. Now I think, well, hang on, I thought Makerfield was the litmus test. I thought the Manchester election, the mayoral election was the litmus test. All positions, all places, every time we've stood anywhere, we poll anywhere between 6 and 8%. Well, I'm not polled, take about 6 and 8% of the vote. That's incredible for a 6-month-old party.
Agreed.
That's the reality. We have, despite all the attacks from the Telegraph and everyone else, we're just growing membership. We're up to about 150,000 members. We've got branches pretty much.
Is that right? Are you really that high?
Yep, we're 150,000 members. We've got branches in pretty much every single constituency, just a handful that we don't have branches in now. Mm. The party is growing rapidly. It continues to. And it will become a really big thorn in Reform's side, more so than it is
Are you
today.
worried? Look, I work with Rupert in the European Parliament. I like Rupert. He then set out those 5 red lines for any kind of pact with Reform. Are you concerned, though, with Rupert and with Nigel? And many people have said to me, just bash their heads together and get them to see sense, because the worry is you split the right vote and you let Labour back in.
I think it is a difficult one. I think ultimately I would like to see more common ground between the two. I would like to see some kind of working together, but equally as well, you can't really ignore the things that have gone on.
Such as?
The way in which Rupert was booted out of the party. Nigel's held about 3 different reasons for why he was kicked out.
What's your thinking on that? Why was he kicked out?
Well, he was kicked out because he'd done the article originally, Rupert Lowe, where he was, a bit critical of Nigel. Nigel doesn't seem to like criticism, He also doesn't like to see people moving, an inch or 2 to the right of him before he's ready. He doesn't seem to like that because if you look throughout his political career, he does this all the time. When people are going a bit too far ahead of him, he gets rid of them. When people start getting a bit of limelight, a bit too much limelight, like Rupert was getting, he was a firm favourite in Reform. He then boots them. That seems to be what he does. I think the problem that he's had on this occasion was that Rupert Lowe was already an MP. Had he not have been, he'd have probably ended up just another Ben Habib. He'd have just faded away, basically. But that obviously wasn't the case. And obviously, as I say, Rupert was very much loved in the Reform movement anyway. Before the split, most Reform voters would have quite happily seen him as leader of Reform. That's the reality.
I mean, certainly. I was there. I helped get all of them elected, and I was delighted that they all got elected. I think it was 5 originally, wasn't it? And then, of course, James was no longer an MP, and then Rupert stepped away. And I mean, it was a heyday, I think, at that time of Reform.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, as I say, at the end of the day, David, I think Reform just the way I look at it now is quite clear to me. Because before, when Rupert was just doing the Restore thing as like a political think tank kind of thing, what I saw happening was Nigel and Reform moving more towards the centre-left.
I think that's fair.
Sorry?
I think that's fair.
Yeah, that's where he was headed. Restore come along, and he's kind of been forced over to the right. And I have real worries with that, because if Restore was not to exist and we all suddenly decided to vote for Reform, my feeling is he would just pivot back to that ground again. And we'd end up with the same position, the same problem that we had in the first place, and the reason why we all started, joining up with Restore.
So would you prefer no amalgamation of those parties, which lets in Labour, or swallowing pride and principles and then coming together? Which is it?
I think it's so long out to the general election. I think we need to wait and see what happens.
OK,
really.
pragmatic, Mark. Very good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for your call. Joan's on the line from Sunderland. Good. Ooh, talk about political history. Good afternoon, Joan.
Hello to you.
Hello, how are you?
All right, thank you. I've just been listening to what you've said about the Sussexes.
Oh, yes.
And quite honestly, I think those two are trouble with a big T. They will cause mischief. And quite honestly, I just really don't want to see them, as far as I'm concerned, that can go and get lost. But I will never forgive them for what they did to their grandparent. When you think about it, Her Majesty and the Duke of Edinburgh, he was nearly 100 years old when he died. And the anguish that those two caused to those lovely, our Queen, who we all loved, and her consort. And when you think about it, Her Majesty, I can still see her in the room when she was shaking hands with Liz Truss, the raging fire, Her Majesty in a tartan skirt, bruises on her hand.
Yeah.
And 2 days later, Her Majesty died. Now, I will never forgive those for the anguish they put our Queen and her consort through. And I just do not want to see them. I'm not interested in them. And if there's any thought of any government paying for security for them, I'll be really mad, because, quite honestly, I think this is grist for the mill for anyone who wants to see the end of the monarchy in this country.
Very well said, Joan. Super comment. Thank you very much indeed for phoning in this afternoon. After the break, we'll go back to politics. I'm going to be joined by Harrison Norman Varty. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, very good afternoon to you. Just after 2 o'clock on Friday. Yeah, happy weekend. Good afternoon. Thanks very much indeed for your company. Let's take a look at all the news this hour. Well, King Charles has made clear Prince Harry will not be his priority. Harry is reportedly set to hold his tongue to regain royal trust, even as a fresh list resurfaces of the times that he and Meghan have criticised Britain. Questions are now swirling over who foots the potentially millions of pounds security bill for their return. Now, Meghan is said to be eyeing a comeback to acting. Aren't we lucky? Britain's soaring welfare bill has forced Chancellor John Healey to borrow more than expected. Benefit payments jumped 7.2% to £30 billion in July alone. Our national debt is closing in now on £3 trillion, piling pressure onto yet another tax-raising budget in October. And the Equalities Minister, Bridget Phillipson, has claimed racism and sexism have become normalised in Britain, a remark that critics are likely to seize on as yet another example of ministers talking down the country. And those are the headlines this hour. Well, thanks very much for your company and all your messages. I'm talking about Harry and Meghan this hour as well, last hour. But what's your reaction to Harry and Meghan coming back? Lots of you just saying, you know, you don't care. Meghan might have an acting job, but not a career. Her novelty as an actor in Britain will soon wear off. That's Rob in Cambridgeshire. Thanks for that. David, with regards to Harry and Meghan, you're not asking the right question. The right question is this: who blinking well cares? We're fed up of hearing their names. I would agree. And also, just in terms of the politics, and we were just talking to Mark there on the phone about restore and reform. This one from Ian says, David, does Mark want to win the argument and lose the election? Let me know. Well, we will. Let's continue that conversation, though, about restore reform, whether there should be sort of a coming together of the right-wing parties to defeat what I think is a dreadful Labour government. Joining me now is Harrison Ormond-Varty, who is a councillor for Reform UK. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, David.
Long time no see, young man.
It's like the golden days and those early Sunday mornings.
Well, that's right, of course. I discovered you. I let you on to Weekend Breakfast back in the day.
You took me into the big time, you did.
Yeah, you're not getting that. Right, let's talk about this, shall we? Because Suella Braverman, she's come out pretty boldly and said, look, Reform UK will not make a deal with Restore Britain or the Conservatives before the next election. She says, she basically told Restore voters, it's time to get real. Time to get real. You need to come over. You need to support reform. Is that the right way to go? Because the real worry here is that actually you've got these two tribes. You've got Nigel and Rupert. They are literally butting heads and people are caught in the middle of it. And what is going to happen, if we're not careful, is there'll be a fracturing of the right wing and Labour will go on to win another term.
I think what reform needs to be careful of is essentially, realistically, everybody knows that elections are basically done on broad appeal across as many walks of life as you can. Now, in areas like where I am in Surrey, where it's a little bit more moderate, you know, when we're talking about votes, let's just say a hypothetical pact with Restore did go ahead, that would be actually really damaging to potentially voters in these areas, which, by the way, have had some of the strongest surges in support for the reform. You look at, in the general election, an area like this, we've got around, I think it was 8.9%. But in the local elections that we had just a few months ago, the areas around here were getting up to around 22%. That's huge growth. And it's actually stronger than some of the areas where reform have natural territory. So it's a case of, OK, well, reform and its brand is very strong. And it's a case of how can we strengthen that. And in my case, I think it weaken it. But the same goes to like the Conservatives, where you've got areas in the north where realistically people would never really want to vote Conservative. They might have done in 2019, but they went instantly back and they regretted voting for them. So it's a case of, does Reform really want to risk its brand with two people either side? The Conservatives, you could argue with, why would you want to associate them and their record? And Restore is a case of, well, there are so many people in that party that are so toxic, and not only awful towards Nigel, but people, just ordinary members of Reform, that the clash of culture simply wouldn't be worth it anyway.
I mean, what I'm a bit confused about is why did Suella come out and say this openly and publicly when at the same time Restore and Reform are talking behind closed doors? Now, you'll remember that Rupert did that video where he set out, and do you remember it was kind of like it was a kind of very weird video, but it was shot slightly on the side, then there was a sort of full frontal sort of view. But also he then talked about these 5 policies: restoring borders, reversing immigration. Controversially, he talks about a comprehensive deportation policy. Every illegal immigrant must be deported, including women and children. And I think that's backdated, well, as far as he can possibly go. Restoring demographic security. He talks about reversing Islamification, banning halal and kosher, cousin marriages, burqas, public Islamic prayer and Sharia courts, a referendum on restoring the death penalty, restoring self-sufficient Britain, and also restoring countries' faith in politics. There's a lot of common ground with Reform there.
There is. And what I thought was quite odd about that video was it felt more like a publicity stunt than an actual offering, to be honest. I think if it was a case of where maybe he picked up the phone tonight and just said, listen, look, realistically, there's something that has to be done. I've got some red lines. I want you to hear them. Give me your feedback. How do you think it'll be received? That's very different. I think he's very much a social media man, or certainly his team are, whether or not it's him doing it, who knows. And I just think it was done for clicks, and I think either way he was going to claim it as a win. Whether it was a case of if Nigel said, yeah, okay, then it'd be like, see, look, Rupert's the man, he's got him. And if he said no, it'd be like, you see, Rupert's the man and Nigel isn't willing to cooperate. So damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. And I do think it's the case, if you look at the last, I mean, you'll be more clued up on this than me, but the last recent polls that we've seen were actually, we're already starting to see the Burnham bounce, if you even want to call it that, start to wear off. And I actually think the polls will be interesting post-budget, because no one really knows who Andy Burnham is.
I mean, that's a very good point, actually. I've got the latest poll in front of me. This is the YouGov Westminster polling. So Reform UK gone up this time, so up 2 points at 24%. Labour down 2 points at 22%. The Conservatives down 2 points at 19%. Restore Britain, much lower, 4%.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, if Labour aren't ahead of the UK in that latest YouGov poll, it's the case, well, when will they? Because now is the time, really, when Burnham has come in, and he's nice and shiny, and he loves gravy, and all this sort of stuff, but realistically, post-budget is when it'll be, he will have to make difficult decisions. You know, we all know that, and people aren't really ready to hear them, but the way he'll phrase it and frame it will be in a way that will be deeply important to a side which, who knows which side he'll pick, because really it'll be either to appease his hard left backbenchers, which is probably what will happen, but it means then he will be rebelling against the markets, and obviously we saw what happened with Liz Truss when that happened. So who knows what will happen, but all I know is it will probably end up in tears, and if he can't get on something now in that latest poll, it makes you wonder where we'll be in 6 months' time once he's had to actually take some difficult decisions.
Just on that note, there is a lot of talk, particularly at our sister publications and organisations, about an early election. Do you think that's likely?
No, I don't. I mean, to be honest, what I would have done if I was Burnham, I would have actually called one off the get-go, and I would have just ridden it and not have to call any...
but that was high risk, so he could have lost.
High risk. It is high risk, but he would have also had a mandate, because the main thing that the ammo that people have got now is realistically he didn't even stand in the general election. He wasn't even an MP. So that you're right. It is high risk, but it is a case of, okay, well, when will he see himself doing a successful campaign? Is he's based head? There's two bets. I can either head one now, where I'm a relatively politician and I don't really have a negative record in government, or I can wait in a couple of years after years of negative press and poor decision making and head for a bet there. I mean, who knows? I mean, the problem is that he does have such a big majority at the moment, inherited from basically everybody abstaining from the election in 2024. So I don't think he will now. I think he was probably waiting for a few good poll numbers. They've probably been a little bit underwhelming, and he'll probably hedge his bets for the next couple of years.
I mean, the sort of counter-argument to that is Reform UK is still not ready. Many people are saying, well, look, you saw Nigel call the Clacton by-election, that in many ways that works. So the £5 million seems to have disappeared off the political agenda for the moment. It may come back. Who knows? The Chris Harborne stuff. Who knows what's going to happen with that? And then you have Tim Montgomery appearing, criticising the way that Reform is run. I mean, what is going on with Reform?
maybe I should ask you. I mean, to be honest, realistically, any serious group of people or party, whatever you want to call it, who is thinking of forming a government, there are obviously going to be disagreements. This isn't a group of people deciding on what their favourite colour is. This is the most serious questions and arguably the most contentious questions that you could ask of an individual and their wider beliefs on how you think you should run a country. Of course there are going to be clashes, not only of personality, but of ideas. And I actually think it's testament that it's reform, shape-shifting in a way that is getting ready for government. I actually think it'd be quite unusual if it was all happy all the way to the general election. I think the fact that there are serious conversations, and look, no one ever promised, and I don't think any Reform member thought that it would have been, it's going to just cruise our way to Downing Street. But also, this is not a unique thing to Reform, as we know. I mean, seriously, look at the last just few months of the Tory party and how chaotic that was. They single-handedly propped up the media viewership because it was like a sitcom every time you turned the TV on. So I think the media are trying to force wedges into places where simply there isn't much of a story there. But I say, keep calm and carry on when it comes to things like that.
OK, Harrison, your line's breaking up, so what we'll do, we'll call you back. In the interim, whilst we do that, let me just give you the latest breaking news about Prince Harry and the claimants, or the claimants with Prince Harry, and the court case. They have just been ordered to pay an initial £9.5 million following that Daily Mail lawsuit loss. Now, in the wake of losing their High Court lawsuit against Associated Newspapers Limited, the publisher of the Daily Mail, Prince Harry and his 6 co-claimants have been instructed to make this initial payment of £9.54 million. Now, the group, which also features Baroness Doreen Lawrence, Liz Hurley and Sir Elton John, had all of their claims turned down by Mr Justice Nicklin last month. Now, although as A&L, which is Associated Newspapers Limited, reported overall legal expenditures exceeding £34.5 million, the full amount will not be settled immediately. So whilst legal representatives for Harry and his fellow claimants argued that the upfront amount should be slightly above £7.9 million, A&L had requested an interim sum exceeding £9.9 million. So the claimants asserted that A&L staff, freelance journalists and private investigators spent 3 decades, starting in the 1990s, engaging in unlawful information gathering, landline tapping, voicemail interception and blagging. So there you are. This is a huge initial payment, £9.5 million. Harry, who else in there? Liz Hurley, Baroness Doreen Lawrence and Sir Elton John, £9.5 million initial payment to Associated Newspapers Limited. Let's go back to Harrison now. We were talking about reform. It's conference season coming up, of course. That will be one to watch to see how all the parties respond and how they seize the political agenda. Let's just talk about Angela Rayner now, because Angela Rayner, the Housing Secretary, took a £20,000 donation from, wait for this, an oil advisory group. You can't make this stuff up. I mean, she's criticised the Conservatives for failing to take on oil and gas giants. She accepted this donation from Signum Global Advisors on July the 8th this year. And she said, I need the money to cover my staffing costs. And, of course, this is massive hypocrisy, is it not? Because she says net zero is great. She loves Ed Miliband. She says we need to do this. And she's taking cash from oil and gas companies, or at least the lobbying groups behind them. It's not OK.
No, it's not. Sorry, I think I got cyber-attacked there by the Labour Party. They're trying to silence it. No, you're right. I mean, when I first looked at this, I thought, I'm sure this will get the same amount of scrutiny as Farage and his money. I mean, when you look at this as well, part of me thinks, OK, she's net zero crazy, just like Ed Miliband. So could there be a silver lining to this? Could the oil company think she clearly cannot understand, facts around the fact that we will need gas, that we will literally have to pay her? Perhaps she's outsmarted all of us and she's actually a genius, and she thought, maybe if I ignore the facts, they'll end up giving me some money. Who knows? I actually can't even think of an angle on this. I mean, there probably doesn't even need to be an angle on this, because the viewers will hear it and think, are you joking? So, I mean, look, it's the same old Labour. They were there in 14 years. They're whiter than white. They're the best of the best. And then as soon as they get in, it's the other way. I mean, whether it's Trump, whether it's net zero on this, it's just nuts.
I mean, she's got form, hasn't she? She forgot to pay stamp duty.
Yeah. that old chestnut. I mean, the best one was when I heard a competing podcaster, I think it was Harriet Harman, she said, well, she's not a lawyer, so she shouldn't expect to know all the laws. Oh, I'll use that one next time you end up in court. Just quote Harriet Harman, everybody. That will save us all. I mean, it's just nuts.
There's another story, actually. Reform is in trouble again. This is a council, so this is right up your street. A Reform UK council has been warned that its cuts to net zero could end walking and cycling schemes, putting children at risk of air pollution, car accidents and obesity. This is in Essex. Essentially, the councillors have voted to cut £3 million out of the net zero initiatives last month, and clearly people not very happy about it. The majority of that money, the £3 million saving, is redundancy costs from cutting staff on net zero schemes. Your thoughts on that?
I mean, look, the fact that, first of all, this whole thing is like an oxymoron. The fact that a local council thinks it can be responsible for the global climate change probably overstating itself slightly. I mean, even if we're going to talk about things like this, you talk about some of the measures that have come in. Let's talk about the 20 miles per hour zone that's come in. You know, the emissions of a car at 20 miles per hour is far higher than a car doing it, for example, 30 miles per hour, okay? So, I mean, look, honestly, I don't know who's written it. It's probably 3 people with too much time on their hands that have submitted a complaint, and someone's picked it up. I think people would rather know that their money has gone towards council jobs, which is obviously to provide social care, which is the main one, and special education needs and all that sort of stuff. I don't think it should be focusing on just a couple of people that have complained and looking for a story out of nothing. I mean,
I think certainly the public would rather their bins were emptied, to be honest.
Which at the moment seems like a tall ask when you look at things like Birmingham. I mean, you can't even expect that. But yeah, mental.
Harrison, really good to talk to you, as always. Harrison Ormond-Varty, the Reform UK councillor. Of course, he made his debut here on Talk on Weekend Breakfast. Lots of messages coming in. Joan spoke perfectly. This is Nick regarding the ghastly duo. They're not wanted, they're not liked, and they should clear off permanently. Warren in Belfast, good afternoon to you. Warren says Restore voters are very much deluded about the party's abilities. There is no evidence of their membership numbers. I was surprised at that number, I have to tell you. Their branches and their polling, again, I'd be amazed if they had that number. He said almost every constituency, and there's 650 of them, remember. Anyway, there's no evidence of their membership numbers, their branches and their polling that they believe they have. They're polling at 1% nationally. Reform doesn't need a deal with any party. They just need to get their mojo back. They're being put on the back foot with the establishment and media onslaught. Let's go to a break. After the break, I'll take your calls, thoughts and messages. This is Talk.
We have to stand up to the French. We have to be much tougher. We have to stop. I mean, it is the pull factor is huge, but even without the pull factor, there are going to be people who, you know, want to come across that bit of ocean and come to us. And I just think, once again, you know, we do a lot of talking about it, and Andy Burnham, every time he's interviewed, says, oh yes, but there's fewer boats coming. There may be fewer boats coming, but they're actually bigger boats and they're holding just as many people. I think the money we're giving to France is unbelievably big for what they're doing for us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk 220 on Friday. Derek's on the line from Manchester. Good afternoon.
Hello, David.
Hello. Hello. How are you?
I'm all right, yeah. I just have to take issue with you over something you said.
Come on then.
Early. It's not, don't worry, it won't hurt.
Go on then.
Earlier on, you were talking to someone about restore and reform.
I was.
Yeah, and you said you rattled off a load of policies, i.e. Remigration, etc. And you said they're both pretty much the same. And I've got to take issue with.
Come on then.
Well, I mean, years ago, I was a member of the British National Party many years ago.
Yeah.
When we were actually, everyone in the world was telling us we were liars when we were reporting on the rape gangs, etc. Everyone in the world was telling us, including all the media, were telling us that we were total liars. It couldn't be happening. It wasn't possible, and all the rest of it. That was 20 years before anyone started saying about it on the media.
Yeah.
But what I will say is, Nigel Farage is on record as having said the only reason he got into politics was to destroy the British National Party. Now, had he not done that at the time, maybe we wouldn't be in the situation we're in now.
Yeah, I mean, but okay. I can't comment on that, but okay, it's certainly a point. And essentially what I was trying to say between reform and restore was, maybe I phrased it badly, there is a lot of common ground, let's put it that way.
I don't think there's as much as you're saying.
Come on then, why not?
As far as I'm concerned, Nigel Farage is quite false. I wouldn't trust him as far as I could throw him. He's a Tory in Jack, and basically he's filling the Reform Party up with the same people. If you've just gone through 13 years and wrecked the country, would you really trust them to do it to the same people?
Well, to be fair to Nigel, I mean, Nigel obviously was there with UKIP. He then was in the Brexit Party. He founded the Brexit Party and now Reform. He's been nowhere near the Conservatives.
Each one is destroyed, hasn't it?
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I mean, certainly with the Brexit Party, we succeeded in leaving the European Union, and once that was done, the party was put on ice. And then it was me and Richard Tice that brought it back, called it Reform UK, and then Nigel came back to it.
Well, exactly. But I think he seems to be like a magnet in destroying parties that are anything like right wing, and that's just my personal belief with Nigel Farage.
But do you honestly believe that Restore can win the next election?
I believe that maybe given a little bit of time, it probably could.
How much time?
People are saying, well, maybe a couple of years. But the thing is, people are seeing. The trouble is, we can't afford another government now that isn't going to do the sort of harsh things that are needed. We haven't been able to afford that time for a long, long time, and even more so now. And unfortunately, I think that with Nigel's track record, I just don't trust the man. I really believe that he's out. I think he's paid off by the establishment, to be quite honest. That's my opinion of Nigel Farage.
Derek, very, very strong views indeed. Thank you very much indeed for sharing those. That's Derek in Manchester. Caroline's on the line from London. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. A couple of things, if I may. Firstly, I want to say welcome back. I've missed you, David. I really have. I hope you come back full time. That's my hope.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you.
No, I mean it. So a couple of things. Firstly, I want to talk about this ridiculous pamphlet. Do you know what? Yeah. I don't think I've ever felt or seen anything more horrific in my lifetime than this pamphlet. And I can see women ending up living in their homes with the doors locked, too scared to go out.
Yeah.
It's horrific. And what I don't understand is a government's job, the first job, is to keep their country and their citizens safe. And this government are doing everything the opposite. It's almost, they're like our enemy. It's like we've had an enemy coming in to take over. And I find it horrific. And I don't know why something can't be done. And then the other point I wanted to make, if I may, is about restore and reform. I am a fan of Rupert, but I'm angry with him and Nigel, to be honest, because they should have had these meetings in private, not on air. And then if they had an agreement, they should have announced it. If we don't get the right side of politics together pretty soon, we are going to be in big trouble. I reckon we could potentially have another Labour, Lib Dem, Green agenda, and I reckon he's going to call an election early.
Do you?
And I'm terrified. Well, if I was his advisor, I would.
So would I.
And to be honest, it's the end of our lives. It's the end.
Well,
and
you see, so the smart money is that actually he has a bounce. Labour is doing well, and also the left wing are so exercised at the moment, and you can see that there's many of the Labour ministers are saying there's a spring in their step, so now would be the time to pounce. Now, there is also another argument in favour of calling an early election, which is that is reform really ready? I don't know. Is Restore ready? Definitely not. So that actually, if he was to go now, I think his chances are much better than going after the budget.
No, I agree. Well, he might prolong the budget. And the thing is, people in this country, David, they're asleep. They've been brainwashed. They're asleep. They don't listen to talk. They listen still to the BBC, or they can't be bothered. And I met somebody yesterday, an old relative. He's 70, very with it. He didn't even know about the pamphlets. I said, how can you not know about the pamphlets? It's been everywhere. And that worries me. And, you know, I'm not in your situation or other people's. What do I do? All I've got is a house. I won't be able to sell it. I've got an EU passport. What does the average person do? Because it's horrifying. They're going to tax us till we're literally starving to death.
Yeah, I mean, look, also, we were just talking about our debt, our national debt, and, of course, the gilts are rising as well. We're in serious trouble, and there is no doubt that taxes will go up in the next budget. I don't know where Labour thinks this money is coming from. They seem to think, you know, it comes off magic money trees.
Well, they're going to put a land tax. Millions of people are not going to be able to afford it. So they're going to lose their homes, or they're going to put some kind of charge on people's properties. People are going to take their own lives, I'm telling you. Already people have. It's really horrific. A death tax. I mean, are they going to tax us when we breathe? I mean, you know, what do you think, David? I mean, how can we not take this government to court for treason? I mean, they're not looking after this country. They're not looking after... They're putting women and children and even men in such high risk.
I mean, we talked about this pamphlet. I mean, it really is extraordinary. And when I first saw it yesterday, I just couldn't believe the tone of the pamphlet. It's sort of a pleading document, isn't it? Yeah. I said it's almost like it's written as a caring, concerning document, like, for example, and it's probably a wrong analogy, but something like an infertility document, saying, you know, being very much on the side, saying, please don't rape our women, don't rape our children, please, you know, you have to respect women in this country. I'm really sorry. If you come to this country, you obey our laws and our customs, or you're out. And anyway, you shouldn't be here anyway.
But they're not doing that. And the left is so well organised. I mean, I found, you know, the Jeremy Corbyn, Diane Abbott thing about the black professor. Very sad he died.
Very sad.
But the fact is, he lied.
He did.
Whether he's black, green, blue, Chinese, anything, he lied. And they are really good at organising, and they're brainwashing the kids. And I don't know if it's repairable. And I love Rupert. Rupert hasn't got a hope in hell of getting anywhere in the short term. And Reform have had, sadly, a lot of scandal. And now this other guy has been sacked. There's one drama after another. And I do wonder about Zia Youssef, because it seems to all come down to him a lot of the time. But what are we going to do? What can we do? Is there no way we can, somebody well-known, a big lawyer, because what they're doing is illegal. They're not protecting their citizens. They're not protecting their country. And people haven't got any more money to buy food, let alone taxes going up.
I agree. I think it's absolutely desperate, the situation we find ourselves in. Caroline, thank you very much indeed for such a cogent argument this afternoon. I'm asking this afternoon, what's your reaction to Harry and Meghan's return? Do you care? Are you happy to stump up the £5 million for their taxpayer-funded security if that is re-implemented? Also, what do you make about Reform and Restore? Should they amalgamate, come together? Or, as we just heard, should they actually take their arguments behind closed doors and stop venting their dirty washing in public? Because it's very unedifying, if you ask me. What do you think of all of that? Let me know. 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can message us on X as well at talkTV. After the break, I'm going to be talking about this article that says racism and sexism in this country have been, and I quote, normalised. We're also going to be talking about the soaring welfare bill, pushing our national debt to a staggering almost £3 trillion. We're going to talk also about the French police being attacked by migrants whilst people are sunbathing on the beach, and we will also talk about Restore, the Tories and Reform once again. I'm going to be joined by Annunziata Rees-Mogg, who is Head of Communications at Popular Conservatism. That's all still to come. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. David Bull here for Ian Collins. My final day, actually, of 2 weeks of covering. Thank you very much indeed for your company over the last 2 weeks. Now, let's talk about something completely different, because racism and sexism have become normalised in Britain. That is the stark warning from Equalities Minister Bridget Phillipson, who says that young men are being sucked into violent misogyny by what she calls the cesspit of social media. Now, she goes further because she's actually accused senior Reform and Conservative MPs of making racist statements and says police simply aren't taking violence against women seriously enough. Let's take a look at what she said yesterday.
I worry that we are kind of at ground zero, really, in terms of attitudes around violence against women and girls. Things that, you know, not very long ago felt totally unacceptable are becoming normal. Okay. And I think we're seeing that in terms of attitudes towards women. I think we see that in terms of attitudes around racism.
So that was Bridget Phillipson speaking yesterday. Joining me now is Annunciata Rees-Mogg, Head of Communications at Popular Conservatism. She also served with me in the European Parliament. It's been a very long time. How are you?
I'm really well. It's lovely to see you. How are you, David?
Yeah, I'm very well indeed. Thank you very much. What do you... I mean, you know, I know you. You're a fiery lady. You speak your mind. What do you make of this, that, you know, Bridget Phillipson just throwing around these lines saying racism and sexism have been normalised in Britain? Well, I don't see it like that.
Well, I mean, I think she is talking out of her hat. She's got a job title and she's got to justify having it. That we do have real, very serious problems in this country. But the idea that they're coming from Robert Jenrick and Nick Timothy is ludicrous. Robert Jenrick went round Birmingham and said he hadn't seen a white face. Why is that any different from Jon Snow going to Glastonbury and saying it was all white faces? That it's an observation. It is a comment on what you see. It is not inciting violence. It is not racism. That she is just trying to justify her position. And when you listen to what she said, as you just played, in fact, she's focusing on violence on women and girls. And when your government is putting out a pamphlet that tells people they should not rape women, that they should not rape children, you know you do have a problem with violence against women and girls, but it's not a homegrown one.
Yeah, I mean, you make a really good pertinent point here. Robert Jenrick, it was an observational comment that he made about not seeing another white face on this trip to Birmingham. Nick Timothy, he said Muslims praying in Trafalgar Square was an act of domination. We believe in freedom of speech in this country.
We do, and that sort of public worship is banned in lots of countries in the Middle East because it is seen as a form of domination. That you can't have it every way. We need to have open discussions. And these are not incitements. They are not prejudicial. They are not racist. They are comments on what they have seen. And I think very fairly, we have all noticed that British society and British culture has been changing, still is changing, and many of us like the one we had.
I mean, I think for many people in this country, it's not just the change, it's the pace of change as well. This country is almost unrecognisable from the country you and I grew up in.
Absolutely. It is. And I'm very glad I live in rural Lincolnshire, where not much has actually changed, and people, you know, my children still go to a church school, and all the old fates and traditions still take place. And I think that's wonderful because they are part of the fabric of our culture. But I think a lot of people have begun to feel that things are not recognisable to them anymore, and they want to feel comfortable in their own country. And the real problem is not that there are lots of cultures here, it's that our own culture has been diminished.
I think that's right. And actually, Kemi Badenoch, I thought, made a very good point about this. She said we want to live in a multi-racial society, not a multicultural society, i.e. there should be one culture, the British culture.
Absolutely. And I think that's bang on, that if you are going to come here, you should adopt our culture. And yes, you shouldn't think that child marriage is acceptable, because it hasn't been here for generations. And rape was illegal before the 1066, when William the Conqueror came over, and remains so. And we have a tradition of a pretty equal society, and we can't undermine that. And the violence against women and children is incredibly worrying.
Yeah, I mean, she makes a good point, actually. One point I do agree with is what young men are seeing online. I think there is a real worry about some of the videos. I think some of the misogyny, the violence, we talked about that the other day. The fact is that young men are being presented with images, for example, about beheadings. I mean, so in many ways, she does have a point about the cesspit of social media. But again, I want to ask you, I'm not a parent, you're a parent. You know, why are these kids seeing these images?
My son is 6, so he's luckily not.
Yeah.
Try and keep him away from them for a bit. But of course there is a dark side to the web, but there is a dark side to life. And it's a parent's responsibility to bring up their children to know right from wrong. And if they don't, then they have failed.
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? And it's the cynical point of view here is talking about violence against women and children, and yet allowing early release of prisoners from our prisons, which go on to endanger our women and children.
Absolutely shocking. So many domestic violence perpetrators are being released under this scheme, that they're trying to change the law because of the tragic case of PC Harper. But there are hundreds and hundreds of people being let out back onto our streets, having not served the punishment they deserved for the heinous crimes they've committed. We need to build more prison places. We need to deport foreign criminals to free up spaces. And even if we only deported the criminals that would go back to Poland and Albania, it would be more than the entire number of British people in any prison anywhere in the world.
Yeah, let's just move on and talk about politics. You and I know something about politics after the years we spent together. But just in terms of that, Suella Braverman saying absolutely no pact between Reform and the Conservatives, or indeed Reform and Restore. Now, other big political beasts, and I could mention one of your relatives, for example, is saying that actually the right does need to come together to ensure that Labour doesn't get into power. Where do you stand on that?
I think the right absolutely have to stop knocking bells out of each other. That the common enemy is the socialist blob that runs us at the moment. It is the structure of our systems, whether it's the quangos, the civil service blocking things. And we need a strong, united right to change that, to make the country what it can be. And in order to do that, we need a new government, and it needs to have a big mandate from the British people, because these are not small changes that need to be done. So let's focus on the common enemies, not beating each other up. Should there be a formal pact? I think that's very difficult. That Reform, Restore and the Tories do attract different voters who might well be put off if there were a formal agreement. But where we agree, let's fight in a united way. And whether it's on immigration or scrapping net zero, there is far more agreement than there is disagreement.
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, actually, Reform UK has done, in my view, has served its purpose in many ways, because actually what it's done is drag the Conservative Party away from the centre to the right. And actually now, of course, the Conservative Party is talking about leaving the ECHR. That would never have happened without Reform.
I don't disagree at all. I think Reform has kept the Tories, or returned the Tories to being honest and conservative. And those are very important things. But the focus has got now to be how to improve the country, not how to score points off party political lines. It's country before party.
And just talking about that, scoring points on party political lines, you know Rupert, you work with Rupert, you work with me. You know Nigel, you work with Nigel, you work with me. You know, so what's your view of those men? Are they just like bulls locking horns? Is this something that you think can be brought together? You know, if they were to sit in a room together with, you know, a stiff drink, is there some sort of reconciliation between the two possible?
I certainly feel it should be possible, and it would be better if there were one. I think the offer that Rupert gave the other day was just insulting to Nigel. It was like a very stupid game of chess where the only result's going to be everyone loses. They are very strong characters. And they have locked horns, and it's going to take a lot of diplomacy to get them back from that position. But again, I would repeat, whether it's about the Conservatives or it's about Restore, it's got to be country before party.
Yeah, I mean, also, you're right. The video that Rupert made was very slick, and there were 5 points. But essentially, he said, take it or leave it. I mean, there was no, we'll meet in the middle. There are bits that I know Reform would agree with, but there were other bits that Reform wouldn't agree with. But actually, I said earlier, in the Venn diagram of life, there's a lot of crossover here, in my humble opinion.
There really is, and I think the British public know and understand that. We know that on the left, they don't have formal pacts, but there's an awful lot of tactical voting to make sure that the best, most viable left-wing candidate takes the seat and gets the position in Parliament. And the right has got to do the same. It's got to be clever enough to win an election, because you can have the purest, most perfect policies, but if you're not in power, they're meaningless.
Well, that's right. And also, just talking about, I still maintain the biggest issue is immigration. We saw that story in La Manga, where people were on the beach and suddenly 60 migrants jumped off a boat and ran towards them, and people packed up their sun towels. And, of course, at the same time, we've just seen the French police officers being attacked by migrants as they intercepted the launch of a boat. We saw this video where the migrants were wearing life jackets. They threw objects at the police to keep them away from the dinghy. And now, actually, the UK's Border Security Commander says that actually the French are taking a more bold and aggressive approach. We signed a deal of 662 million quid, giving it to the French. Do you think that's true? Are the French doing enough?
I think the French love to claim to be doing enough to justify the nice paycheck that successive prime ministers keep signing off on. This is ridiculous. In fact, they're doing very small amounts, and to the extent they've increased the number of events that they have prevented. Well, that means that they've taken a few life jackets or possibly one of the very small boats. But what they haven't done is prevented more. In fact, they've prevented fewer people crossing the channel. So then the reason fewer people are coming is not because the French police are doing the job they're paid to do and stopping them. I'm sorry they got attacked, but I think they need to do an awful lot more, because this problem does start their side.
Let's just talk about, finally, if we may, the welfare bill. It's extraordinary. It's almost £3 trillion in this country. And when you actually work out the numbers, you know, it's £333 billion just in benefits. I mean, so John Healey's going to spend more money. He's going to have to borrow more money. We know that there was a £1.8 billion deficit in July. We are in serious trouble, and I don't think Labour has a plan to get us out of it.
I don't think they've got a clue how to get us out of it. Labour never has. It leaves us bankrupt every time. Our national debt is now the same as our GDP.
Yeah.
At 100% rate. It's not sustainable. The long-term interest rates, the bond yields are going up. Inflation is going up, which pushes interest rates up. That makes life less affordable. It makes us all worse off. You cannot dig yourself out of a hole, and you cannot tax yourself out of debt.
No, you can't. Just finally, when's the election?
Oh, I was thinking Andy Burnham might go for a snap one if he got a bounce. I don't think his bounce has been nearly big enough to tempt him into an early election. So I have reverted to my old view. He'll go long. And most of these Labour MPs have got the best paying, cushy-ish job they've ever had. They're not going to vote they're not going to support an election that they're likely to lose.
No, I think it's a very fair point. He's only just got through the door of number 10, hasn't he? Annunziata, it's so good to see you after all this time. Thank you so much for coming on. That's Annunziata Rees-Mogg, who's Head of Communications at Popular Conservatism. Let me know your thoughts, please, about the government, the economy, the fact we've got this soaring welfare bill. Also, are the French doing enough? And do you really care whether Harry and Meghan come back to this country? You might if you know you're paying £5 million to look after them in terms of security. The number 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222, and you can message us on X as well at Talk TV. After the break, it's your go. Your calls, thoughts and messages. This is Talk.
We have to stand up to the French. We have to be much tougher. We have to stop. I mean, it is the pull factor is huge, but even without the pull factor, there are going to be people who, you know, want to come across that bit of ocean and come to us. And I just think, once again, you know, we do a lot of talking about it, and Andy Burnham, every time he's interviewed, says, oh yes, but there's fewer boats coming. There may be fewer boats coming, but they're actually bigger boats and they're holding just as many people. I think the money we're giving to France is unbelievably big for what they're doing for us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk. Hi, David. There has to be a mechanism by which we can take the government to court. The people versus the government. Every rape, murder or other crimes perpetrated by illegal immigrants, or frankly any foreign national, makes the government culpable. Surely. That's Sally. Sally, thank you for that. Carl, good afternoon to you. David, what's happened? Have you got to toe the line from UK News? Get Farage at any cost? Have you been turned as you're very anti-reform? I'll explain. As for Meghan and Ginger, we're not interested and turned off many times when the grifters are talked about. Not interested. Vote Reform UK or lose. Restore are the new BNP. Why you give them time on 4% vote share? I don't know. Look, I'm trying to be as impartial as I possibly can. I have no formal role within Reform, and therefore I'm here as a broadcaster and an independent broadcaster at that, and I will leave that there. David, this is Amanda. I believe when it comes to a general election, Restore voters will either vote none of the above or for Reform UK. Amanda, thanks very much for that. On the line is Paul in Devon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, David. Glad to see you back.
Thank you.
And sorry to see you go, but I'd just like to say that I refer back to a time when you were on the Talk on a Sunday.
Yes.
And you gave a question out that said, what do we think would be the greatest threat to democracy in this country? And I actually phoned in and spoke to you and told you that it was the current political class, the greatest threat to this country. And haven't I been proved right?
You have.
You know, people, you know, I listen to Alex Phillips here, and she talks about it's the Russians, the Iranians and things. No, it's not. The actual real danger and clear and present is the current political class, which are trying to collapse this country.
So let me just dig into that. Now, is it because you say they're trying to collapse the system, or is it because there's such a disconnect? They're all living in, you know, wherever Highgate, and they have no comprehension of what's going on. You know, as you know, I went around the country, I saw 30,000 people. I reckon I'm pretty close to the ground on what people around this country are thinking.
No, I think that this is being deliberately done. This is nothing to do with disconnect. This has been a long time coming. You've got to look at the Labour Party at the moment. I would say 3/4 of the Labour Party MPs, including our current Prime Minister, if you can call him that, are connected to or are senior members of the Fabian Society, as was Keir Starmer before. You look at the Labour front bench, all membership of the Fabian Society. The Fabian Society, their symbol or motif, as they call it, is a wolf in sheep's clothing, and they have been taking the long march through the institutions for a long, long time, and they've been doing it bit by bit. If you look at Europe, Europe is a Fabian construct. Ursula von der Leyen, or as we call Ursula fond of lying, is basically a Fabian.
That's very good. I like that.
The woman herself is just a basic rabid socialist who's never been elected in Europe in her life, but she studied at the London School of Economics, which that was started by the Fabian Society. This country is being destroyed from the inside. You know, these people that are coming into France and getting on the boats, coming over here, the French have been told by the EU not to stop them. And it's the EU that are pushing these boats across. Because the more we take in, the more chance there is of them destroying the basic, very fabric of the society that holds us together and fracturing us.
Let me just explain to people, the Fabian Society is a British socialist organisation whose purpose is to advance the principles of social democracy and democratic socialism via gradualist and reformist effort in democracies rather than by revolutionary overthrows related to radicalism and left-wing liberal tradition. So infiltration is what you're saying, that this is a much longer game, and this is all by design.
Yes, it is. And if you look at your current Tory party now, which is the remnants of what was there before they got voted out, you have a leader of the Conservative Party who is a very, very good young global leader of the World Economic Forum. Most of the Tory party, you could say, what Maggie Thatcher would describe as wets. They're basically socialists, and they're wolf in sheep's clothing. You know, for the past 15 years, this country was basically being destroyed by them. And all they did was, it's just like a relay race. They passed the baton over to the Labour Party, who are going to continue this decline. We are not part of their thoughts. The reason why they want all these young men in here is because when they send our young men away to fight in Ukraine for a war they did not start, and to fight for a Ukraine that doesn't really recognise us at all, and a Europe, should we say, they're going to be sitting here to replace. And if you look at what I think that is going to happen here with all these young men being spread about the country now, and, you know, come 2029, I think if Burnham hasn't called an election by then, he's going to call an amnesty.
I mean, I've heard this before. I mean, it's a very compelling argument. I think it's absolutely terrifying if you're essentially saying they're sleeper cells in this country to destabilise this country. Paul, thanks ever so much for your call this afternoon. That's Paul in Devon. Paul is on the line from Hertfordshire. Good afternoon to you.
Hello, it's Herefordshire.
Oh, sorry, Herefordshire. I can't even read. Sorry about that. It's been a long week.
I want to say I agree with that gentleman you've just had on.
Do you?
Yes, I do. I'm frightened to death for this country.
Yeah.
I've gone beyond.
So where's it all gone wrong?
Well, I would say basically since Tony Blair. When he came in, I was sat in a car. This isn't what I rang for.
No,
I was sat in a car with my boss, and he got that majority, and I burst into tears because my instinct told me that my country would never be the same again.
How true.
And I went up to Hay Festival, and I got what's the man that used to live near Richmond before Rishi? The MP, bald-headed man, Yorkshire man.
William Hague.
William Hague. I went to Hay Festival. I bought his book. I got to and I asked him if I could ask him a question, and I said to him, do you think Cameron is worth my vote? Because I was really, really worried about him as well. Anyway, he said, oh, yes, he's lovely, fine, all the rest. But I thought, well, either you told me a lie or you were suckered in as well. So I think we've been going wrong a long time. And on top of everything else, I'm so glad that I'm old But on top of everything else, to think that we're going to have to pay for Harry to come back is like the tip of the iceberg.
I mean, it is I mean, it is. So what? So just moving on to that. Why? But why are they coming back?
Oh, they've run out of money, haven't they?
Do you think that's it?
He wants money from his parents to pay for the kids' schooling. I mean, it's obvious he's a nasty piece of work he's turned into. I feel so sorry for William and Catherine and their lovely children. They're the only blasted beacon of hope we've got in this country, and I can't see why they would want to carry on.
I mean, it's a really, really interesting point, actually. Thank you ever so much for your call this afternoon, Paula. Lots of other messages are coming in. Hi, David. Now Reform are using the Conservatives' argument. Remember, before the election, the Conservatives were saying every 5 minutes that if you vote Reform, you're splitting the vote. Now Reform are doing the same by saying if you vote for Restore, you're splitting the vote. Hypocritical much? I did support Reform, but I'm now not sure as Reform get closer to the centre as every month passes. Interesting comment. However, Warren in Belfast says Restore voters are very much deluded about their party's abilities. There is no evidence of their membership numbers, their branches and their polling that they believe they have. That's interesting. Also, does Mark... Oh, I think I did this, but does Mark... This was our caller earlier, Mark. Does he want to win an argument and lose the election? I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are on this, whether the right does need to unite, or are we too far out from an election? Now, my personal view is that when an election is called, I think it will actually concentrate minds very quickly about the direction of travel and whether there needs to be some sort of alliance to ensure that the Labour government is kicked out of office once and for all. There are some very big egos at play, let's put it that way, and it will be interesting to see what happens next in terms of whether there is any kind of amalgamation of the right-wing parties. Many of you talking about Meghan and Harry. Also, oh, well, this is quite a good one. Elaine says Meghan wants her kids and herself pictured on the royal balcony, and also photos in glossy magazines of her, of Harry and the kids with the royal family at Christmas. She's cashing in now before the kids grow up and have their own fame. Ooh, that's interesting. Also, lots of others about immigrants as well. I think the experience of those migrants landing on the beach would have been truly shocking. A black dinghy, foreign nationals. How could anybody not think that this was a military assault? My mind goes back to 2015 when gunmen stormed the beach in Sousse, Tunisia, killing 38 tourists. When is the government going to take the illegal migrant crisis seriously? In Florida, where I used to live, there's a blimp permanently flying over the Keys, monitoring boats from Cuba. Why can't Spain and the UK do the same thing? Why can't they actually monitor our coastlines? Don't go anywhere. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, just after 3 o'clock. One more hour to go. I've been here for 2 weeks. Thanks ever so much for your company. Let's have a look at the news headlines this hour. Well, King Charles has made clear Prince Harry will not be his priority. Harry is reportedly set to hold his tongue to regain royal trust, even as a fresh list resurfaces of the times that he and Meghan have actually criticised Britain. Now, questions are swirling over who actually foots that bill. The millions of pounds, that security bill for their return. Meghan now said to be eyeing up a comeback to acting. Aren't we lucky? Now, Britain's soaring welfare bill has forced Chancellor John Healey to borrow more than expected. Benefit payments have jumped 7.2% to £30 billion in July alone. Our national debt is closing in on £3 trillion, piling pressure onto another tax-raising budget in October. And Equalities Minister Bridget Phillipson has claimed racism and sexism have become normalised in Britain. It's a remark critics are likely to seize on as yet another example of ministers talking down this great country. Well, a very good afternoon to you. Those are the news headlines. Now, every single front page this afternoon has Meghan and Harry on it. I tried to find other stories, but that is the lead story across the board on every news outlet, everywhere that you look. Now, the King has made it very clear that actually the Prince of Wales and the future of the royal family are his priority, as the Duke and Duchess I think they were the Duke and Duchess, announced their return to the UK. Apparently, they didn't even tell him. They didn't consult him. They then just landed it on him. Anyway, he said he was naturally pleased with the opportunity to see more of his family in a private and personal capacity. The King apparently was with William at the time, which would have made a very interesting moment to watch William's face when he found out that his brother was coming back to the country. He has said, the King, that the work of the institution will not change. Now, he's also said they will remain private individuals. They will not have a royal role at all. The late Queen was very clear. She said you cannot be half in and half out. You're either in or you're not in. And that apparently will carry on. Now, just in terms of that, they obviously met the King. They were hosted at Highgrove. That's the country house in Gloucestershire. That's when Archie 7 and Lilibet 5, the first time, actually, they'd seen the grandparents since 2022, when they were 3 and 1. My goodness, they would have grown enormously in that time. And, of course, Meghan seemed to enjoy it. She posted pictures on Instagram about the stay and about the places that she'd gone. And that's what we know so far. Now, Harry also says, right, I'm going to keep my mouth shut, well, about time, and he's not going to talk about private family matters anymore, even though he's already written a book and done Netflix and Spotify, and he's been called a grifter and all the rest of it. Anyway, that's where we now are. Now, the big question for me is what happens to his security. I have long argued they should not have any security whatsoever, and particularly when they were living in the United States. It's not a problem, because they left. They went there. They went to the United States. Now they've come back. Now, then you have a problem, because there are 5, I think, security-related terrorist threats to them, including from Al-Qaeda. They're also a weak link for the royal family. Of course, they could be held hostage, for example, against the royal family. So then the question is, who on earth is going to pay for their security now? Is it still a private matter? There's a very strong argument they're private individuals. They're not actually fulfilling royal duties. Now, if they do royal duties, then one might argue that they then should get protection. Now, the question is, this protection, if it is going to be paid for by the state, is £5 million. So where's that coming from, and who's paying for it? Well, joining me now is Will Geddes, who's a security specialist. Good afternoon, Will.
Hello, David. Thank you for having me on your show again.
Really good to see you once again. Now, look, where do you stand on this? Because, you know, look, the facts have changed, haven't they? You and I spoke some time ago about the fact that, look, if they're in the States, they're nothing to do with us, so we're not paying for their security, but they're coming back, lucky us. And now they're coming back, and there are active threats against them and against the family. So who pays?
Well, I'm with you, David. I personally believe that he should pay for his own security. If he's not going to be fulfilling royal duties and he's not going to be actually a representative or ambassador for the royal family in a positive sense, then he is not necessarily entitled to it. Now, you did raise some important issues in terms of his vulnerability or the potential risk of kidnapping, possibly. But again, that could apply to the children. It could apply to Meghan. However, the biggest problem that Prince Harry has had in certainly getting any kind of ruling or judgment is the fact that RAVEC and the Risk Management Board, who actually do the risk assessment based on the 6 threats, most of which are pretty tenuous. I'm happy to go through them, David, with you, but most of them are pretty tenuous. They have a massive backlog right now. And there's also the small matter of the number of prime ministers we've had in the last 5 years.
There are many.
Yeah, so there's a very, very, very big shortage of royalty and specialist protection officers. So there is a huge backlog there, and unfortunately, I think he comes a little way further down the queue in terms of priorities, especially if he's coming back as a private citizen.
I mean, it's interesting. I had a meeting with the former Prime Minister last week, and again, this Prime Minister had specialist protection with her, and it was just interesting to see the level of professionalism of those officers. And as you rightly say, we've had 7 prime ministers in 10 years, so you naturally won't have a huge sort of a reservoir of those specialist security officers. Now, but then the question is, you know, if they then succumb to, say, a kidnap, that then leaves the royal family open and vulnerable. So one could argue that actually that then jeopardises the safety and security of the monarch.
Not necessarily. I mean, I would say that it doesn't necessarily present any greater risk, David, than it does any of the other minor royals which he falls into the category of. So, for example, Andrew's children and Fergie, for example, they don't have royalty specialist protection. Andrew lives on the royal estate, so he has and is umbrellaed by all the other security that protects everybody on the royal estate. So if Meghan and Harry are deciding to get themselves a little soiree in the Cotswolds, for example, they've already had security in the United States, and some of that security are former members of RASP. So they are extremely experienced, and the risk to them here in the United Kingdom is significantly less. For example, guns are less prolific or available, and therefore I think he is just going to have to pay for his residential security, as do, for example, many of my high net worth and ultra high net worth and people in the prominent eye clients themselves.
Yeah. How much is that going to cost then?
Well, I mean, I don't think the Daily Mail is far off in their estimate of about 5 million. But a lot of
5 million over what time period?
That's over a year.
Right.
But it really, really, really is dictated, David, by what they decide to do in their year. So, for example, if they want to jump on a plane off to the Maldives every other week, or they want to go to Ukraine and shake hands with Zelensky, or do some other sort of nonsense trip, faux royale trip to various parts of the world, then yes, there will be additional security, some of which will be provided by their host, or the bill will be picked up by their host. But I think the key thing really for Harry being here will be his team accessing what we call sovereign intelligence, which is that live feed of intelligence that comes out of MI5, the Counter-Terrorism Command and the Metropolitan Police and the relevant constabulary that they may be located within.
Right, so does a private security firm, if they're working for Harry and Meghan, would they have access to that intel?
Not at the moment. No, they wouldn't. If you're a current member of the royal family, your team would. If you're in the private sector, David, you don't have that. You're running off open source intelligence. You're working off individuals that may be known. They could be fixated people. I think one of Harry's biggest risks potentially is not only that him and Meghan are massively disliked in this country, so why they've come back here and not moved to their home in Portugal, I don't know. I would say it's probably something to do with the failing health of the king. However, I think ultimately, you know, a vast majority of Harry and Meghan's risks are what we call fixated people. Now, he's claiming within his 6 threats that he's facing, most of which have been born from his own actions, including talking about his kill count of the Taliban in his.
I mean, yeah, how stupid was that comment?
It was baffling. I mean, it was baffling, David, in so much as, you know, I spent time in war zones, including Afghanistan. You don't talk about that sort of stuff when you come home.
Of course you
just
don't.
No.
I mean, I found the whole thing. I mean, the other thing is that many of our viewers and listeners are postulating that maybe they're broke because obviously they've been living this rather lavish lifestyle in California with this great big property. And of course, we now know from the High Court they've been ordered to pay this initial payment to the Daily Mail publisher of 9.5 million quid. So again, there's going to be more sort of resources used up from Harry and Meghan.
Yeah, I mean, when you bear in mind their home in Montecito is worth or estimated at about 11 million. They've got a home in Portugal. I don't know what the value is of that, but there's probably about another remaining 40 million that needs to be paid on that Daily Mail bill, let alone the fact that they have no other source of income, which might be why Meghan is going to be going back to work in some shoddy sitcom or I don't know what. Who knows?
I'm sure she'll be delighted by you calling it a shoddy sitcom. We don't know what it is, actually, at the moment. I mean, it's interesting in terms of what they will do next. Just in terms of having private security in this country, the private security can't be armed, can they?
No, not in this country. We can't be armed. And to be honest, David, it's one of those things which is a fallback for many people. They think, oh, I need to have armed security. But yeah, in an ideal world, we'd love it. But only RASP officers, the authorized and trained police officers and the military are the only people who are permitted to carry firearms in this country. Now, the number of times where a firearm in a protective capacity, and I'm talking more the RASP officers, has needed to be deployed has been so few and far between. And to be honest, if the team is highly professional, David, they're not just bullet catchers, they're not just big lumps that move around. I've done it for 30 years. You know, if you plan your operations well, you schedule your routes correctly, you manage the itinerary in the best possible way, you mitigate those kind of risks which could potentially be presented. And there is the fact that the accessibility to firearms by bad guys out here is very limited.
Yeah. Will, always good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Will Geddes, their security specialist, talking about Harry and Meghan. Lots of messages coming in. Hi, David. This is Tony in Norfolk. Good afternoon to you. The royal family should pay for any protection for the Sussexes. They've invited them back. Have they? I'm not even sure that's true. Why should the taxpayers stump it up? I agree. Not unless you're working. 5 million quid. Thanks very much for that, Tony. David, we know that Russia and its allies, brackets Iran, are driving the migration into Europe, whether it's across the Finnish and Polish borders or southern Europe. It's all part of Russia's grey war on Europe. Once again, the left are proving to be useful idiots. Isn't that the truth? David, this is Jane. Good afternoon, Jane. It's so lovely to have you back. That's very kind. Thank you very much. Meghan, why would you live in a country you hate and where people don't like you? Also, as most schools have been closed for the summer holidays, places for their children would have been arranged before then. So that's a very good point, actually. So they've known for quite a long time. Did they tell the king or not tell the king? Anyway, their places would have been known far earlier than that. As for paying for their security, it's a joke. My wish for this country is for Rupert, Nigel and Kemi somehow to join forces to get rid of the government before they can do any more damage. Here's hoping. Jane, thanks ever so much for that as well. Keep those messages coming in, please. What's your reaction to Harry and Meghan coming back? Should we pay for their private security? 5 million quid? Your thoughts, please. 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk and your message to 87222. You can message us on X as well, at talkTV. And, of course, this is Talk.
we have to stand up to the French. We have to be much tougher. We have to stop. I mean, it is the pull factor is huge, but even without the pull factor, there are going to be people who, you know, want to come across that bit of ocean and come to us. And I just think, once again, you know, we do a lot of talking about it, and Andy Burnham, every time he's interviewed, says, oh yes, but there's fewer boats coming. There may be fewer boats coming, but they're actually bigger boats and they're holding just as many people. I think the money we're giving to France is unbelievably big for what they're doing for us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk 317 on Friday. Yay! Right, let's talk about GCSE, shall we? Because, of course, the results have come out. Well, Britain's strictest headmistress has proved her critics wrong yet again, with top GCSE results to rival, wait for this, Eton, despite serving one of the capital's most deprived areas. Now, Catherine Burble-Singh, head of Michaela Community School in Brent, North London, is celebrating really good results. More than 50% of her entries being grade 9. That's 10 times the national average of 5%. In addition, 82% of all grades were at least a 7. That is the equivalent of, in my days, of an A, compared with around 22% nationwide. Now, when you look at Eton's results, they haven't published the results this year, but when you look at 2025, 61.9% of its grades were 9 and 94% were at least 7. So the fact that the Michaela's results are not far behind is remarkable. It really is remarkable, because unlike Eton, it doesn't have an entrance exam, and also it has a completely comprehensive mixed ability intake. Well, I'm delighted to say that Catherine Burble-Singh, CBE, founder and head teacher of Michaela Community School and Britain's strictest headmistress, joins me this afternoon. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Lovely to... we met last week, actually, didn't we, for the first time?
Yes, indeed, we did. And it was very nice to meet in person.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, congratulations on absolutely stonking results. Well done.
Well, thank you. Yes, and the other thing to say about the difference between us and Eton is that we, of course, have 7,500 per pupil. They have about 50,000 per pupil. Just to, it is hard having Eton as the competition.
But that shows how well you've done. But doesn't that show how well you've done? And we had a long conversation last week. But your ethos and your ethic is really powerful, it's really strong. And do you want to just explain to people who maybe don't know about the Michaela School and what you stand for and the guiding principles that you put in front of the children and why you're achieving such great grades?
Yes, so it's a good question. So 3 things make us different. We have traditional discipline. So I'm called the strictest headmistress. People think that means I'm mean. It doesn't. It just means that I love them enough to keep our standards high for them. Then we have traditional teaching, which means the teacher is standing at the front leading the learning, as opposed to it being child-centered learning where the children are looking at each other and leading the learning. It's the teacher who's at the front driving the bus. And then we also have traditional values, things like belief in personal responsibility, a sense of duty towards others. When I get a detention, I'm not just letting myself down, I'm letting my whole form group down, I'm letting my parents down, and so on. The idea that you might sacrifice something that's important to you for the sake of the whole. We believe very much in being British. We have a British flag that flies outside and we sing God Save the King. We don't allow the children to think that they're victims and to feel entitled. There's very much a sense of, I've got agency, I'm responsible for myself, and I'm going to make something of my life and jump over the various obstacles in front of me, instead of blaming everything on the outside for the positions that I find myself in.
And that's... Now, sorry, carry on.
No, go on. I was going to say, so that kind of attitude means that all of the children are reaching their potential. They're not lazy. They're just working really, really hard. And we teach them kindness. We teach them gratitude. These are all small C conservative values that we all took for granted once upon a time. it was just normal. And it didn't matter where you were on the political spectrum. You could be right or left. Everybody had these values.
I think you're absolutely right. We spoke about this last week as well. And children really thrive and prosper when they get very clear boundaries. And that's what you're setting out. The Union flag, God save the King, that actually, and you use that word agency, and I think that's a really good word, actually. The children are in charge of their own destiny. And I'm seeing so many young people who are victims or believe they're victims, and they believe they can't actually change their futures, and that is not true.
That's right. And it's so debilitating. That's the number one thing that will stop them from trying to change anything, is the fact that they believe that they can't do it. It's all about where there's a will, there's a way. The fact is, you've only got one life. You've got one set of cards to deal. If you spend your whole life saying, oh, but life is difficult for me because my father wasn't there for me, or because I grew up on an estate, or I was poor, or I was black, or I was, I suffered from mental health, or whatever it is. There are all these different groups nowadays that everyone's sort of vying for to be able to say, well, that's my victim card. It's poison. It's just awful. What you've got to do is think, what's in front of me? What can I do? How can I work hard in order to achieve? And that is very much what we do. And what at my new podcast, Strictly Education, which has just launched yesterday.
Well done. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, I'm talking all about Strictly Education is really for parents, for teachers, for anybody who's interested in children. I'm trying to make people understand just how important children are to the future of the country. They are 100% of the future, and we should all care about them.
I couldn't agree more. And actually, I think we need to spend more money on schools generally, because they are the future of this great country. Now, what do you make of these comments? So clearly you are saying that education and academic attainment and achievement are important. Lucy Powell doesn't feel the same.
No. So she doesn't really know much about schools, understandably.
She's the education secretary.
I know, but you know how it works in politics. You get put in a position and they don't know anything. But then it's up to them to go and meet the successful head teachers and successful schools out there. And I mean, she doesn't have to talk to me. There are lots of Labour supporting teachers online who are absolutely outraged by her various comments about how she never learned trigonometry, so who cares about trigonometry? I mean, obviously we should care about trigonometry because engineers and surveyors and electricians, they all need it. This idea that, look, what people need to know is that in 2009, we only had about 60% of children passing their English and maths. Now, nowadays, we've had 70%. So it's more children passing. Now, this year it's dropped. It's not as good. It's about 70. We're looking at about... well, I don't think it's as good. I think it's dropped since last year. But you're looking at about 70% in comparison to 60%. The fact is, every teacher knows that those exams have got harder. They got harder, and yet we've increased the number of children passing them. Now, how does that happen? Because maths and English are prioritized. Lucy Powell would like to deprioritize the emphasis on academic subjects. That's what she said. Now, as soon as you take away the emphasis on academic subjects, English and maths are going to drop, and they're going to drop back not just to 60%, but to less than that. I don't understand why we would have a plan to actually reduce the number of children who are going to pass English and maths.
Yeah. I was reading the list of how you boost your children's learning at home. One of the things on the top of the list is they need to be reading every day. You say reading is a superpower.
It really is. So to all your viewers, my number one advice is take your child off the smartphone. If they're young, don't give them one yet. If you've given them one, take it away as soon as you can, because they will get addicted to it. They won't be able to read anymore because no book can compete with a smartphone. The smartphone is flashing all sorts of colors. It breaks their brain because you're interrupted constantly, your concentration. Whereas with a book, you have to have imagination. You've got to develop the long form of reading. It is a superpower. If you look, even if it's only 15 minutes a day, they must read every day. And the thing is, then you move it to 16 minutes, then 17 minutes, and 18 minutes, and so on. Honestly, it is when they're 14, 15, if they can read and read well, they can read history and geography and science and all sorts. Honestly, best thing ever. For those children who are stuck on those screens, get them off. again, it's the kind of thing that I'll be talking about on my podcast, Strictly Education, because I'm just desperate to help all those families out there who don't get this traditional advice, because it's really quite rare to find people out there who will give you this sort of traditional advice.
But for me, reading was a great joy as a child. As you say, I used my imagination. I used to get through books so quickly. I loved it, you know, whether it was Narnia or whatever it was. It was a fantastic view on the world, I guess.
Yes. But you grew up at a time when you weren't having to compete with screens.
Correct.
And when families are raising children now, it's very hard because all of the friends will be on phones. And then they feel, well, I've got to give my child a phone because I don't want him to be without friends and I don't want him to miss out. But they have no idea how dangerous it is. I implore with all your listeners, please don't give them a smartphone. Give your child a book and sit and read with them. It's a wonderful bonding time, and especially for the little ones, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, and so on. Sit and read the board books. Draw your finger under the words as you are reading. Get them to then, well, if you read it, many parents will say to me, but I've read it so many times. Keep reading the book over and over and over again, because the children love it. And then eventually they're able to repeat the words to you because they've learned them by heart. There's nothing better. It's like memorizing poetry. It's wonderful. Please, parents, do not give them screens. I see those prams with the spot in the pram that you can put an iPad in. This is toxic. Please don't do it, parents. It's the worst thing you can do for your child.
I would agree entirely. What about numeracy?
Yes, so it's very good to pick me up on that. So count the peas on the plate, count the cars in the street, count the houses. Once they can count to 100, then start counting by 2s, then 3s, then 4s, and then eventually they'll be able to do their times tables. So those kids at school that seem really bright and have done really well, it's because their parents did this with them when they were 3 and 4. So when they started school, they already knew how to read. So they look like they're geniuses. They're not geniuses. It's just that their parents taught them how to read and how to count before they got to school. So you do the same for your child. Your child can be top of the class. You just need to get them to do work. That's all.
And one of the other things that I think comes out from everything that you've said, and certainly what we talked about last week, was that children need a schedule. They can't just have an open-ended day where they don't know what time of the day it is and what time they go to bed. The schedule is paramount.
Yes, absolutely. And the routine. So if every day they wake up at 7 o'clock, that needs to be every day at 7 o'clock. The alarm goes, come on, everybody, it's the same. And then if we have breakfast at 7:30, we all eat breakfast at 7:30. If bath time is at 7 o'clock in the evening, that's when you have bath. If dinner is before, dinner is after, it's always at the same time. There's always a time for homework. Right now is your homework time. It's 7:30. Get at your desk. I want to see you working. Whatever the time is, you can draw it up, write it out with a big black marker on a piece of paper, stick it on the fridge. If you have an older child, get them to sign at the bottom. This is our contract. This is what we're doing. These are my expectations. Be really clear with them on what you want from them. This is the sort of advice that I'll be giving on my podcast, Strictly Education, because honestly, with the gentle parenting that we're told to do nowadays, where when children do the wrong thing, just explain to them what they've done wrong. No, there needs to be a consequence. There needs to be praise and punishment. This has worked for centuries. That's how children learn, that they will appreciate you for it, and they will know that there is real clarity. Children love, they don't mind being punished as long as you're clear about it, as long as they don't feel it's unfair. It's when they feel, well, you didn't do that to Johnny, but you've done that to me. Wait a minute. That's when they get annoyed.
Yeah.
But if you've been very clear, if you do the wrong thing, this is what will happen to you, they'll listen to you and they'll accept it. They will.
So very clear boundaries and essentially what they have to sign up to. I love that thing about the contract. But also, I've watched a lot of parents, you mentioned gentle parenting there, but a lot of parents, and we spoke about this last week, where they're not behaving as parents. They're trying to be their friend. And I don't understand that.
That's right. So that's exactly right. Gentle parenting is very much, let's be friends. And I'm very much of the belief that that is not our role as adults. We are not meant to be their friends. You can be friends with them when they're 25, that's fine. But when they're 2 and 7 and 14, and especially when they're 14, it gets hard, you know, you have to hold the line. And you need to do what's right. You've signed up for a very difficult 18 years. Like, I mean, that it is hard. Children are hard, right? But that's why we love them. They are challenging. I love working with children precisely because they're so challenging. And you just need to hold the line. And, you know, there's this wonderful scene in Gladiator where Maximus takes his generals out and he says, hold the line. What we do echoes in eternity. He says, stay with me. What we do echoes in eternity. And the thing is, It really does echo in eternity. If we hold the line, your 25-year-old is going to be this wonderful young man who comes home and takes you out for dinner and is just lovely to you.
Oh, have I lost you? Oh, that is such a shame. What an inspiration. Catherine, thank you so much. Sorry, we've lost the connection to Catherine. I was going to ask her, actually, about apprenticeships and what she thought of that. But anyway, Catherine Purblesing there, CBE, and rightly deserved, if you ask me. Founder and head teacher of Michaela Community School. She's called Britain's strictest headmistress. But as she said, children are a challenge, and that's what makes them great. Brilliant, brilliant stuff. Keep all your messages coming in. We'll take a break. After the break, it's your turn. It's your thoughts, calls and messages. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Lots of messages. Isn't she brilliant, Catherine Purblesing? Amazing, amazing. Angie, good afternoon to you. Angie says, my 15-year-old's teachers always say they can tell I read to her, or I have read to her since day one. She's a straight-A student now. Absolutely brilliant. Matthew, good afternoon to you. Catherine Purblesing for Education Secretary in a reform government. I totally agree. She's brilliant. That's what we want. We want people who are optimistic and powerful and, you know, and they say to kids, education is fun and you can learn and you can do maths and you can do English and it's brilliant. I love it. I absolutely love it. Right, we're going to talk about something else now, which actually is very concerning indeed, which is hundreds of pharmacies are facing closure because of soaring business rates, with owners warning that high taxes are forcing them to cut services to vulnerable patients. Now, almost half of the 420 pharmacy owners surveyed by the National Pharmacy Association said they were considering shutting down their practices because of higher business rate bills. Now, the trade body warned that pharmacists, many of which, as you know, are family-run businesses, are unable to offset the higher tax burden by raising prices. The reason for that, of course, is the prices are set by the NHS. Now, the NPA, which is the National Pharmacy Association, found 55% of pharmacy operators were considering either moving to cheaper premises, raising fears that some rural and coastal communities could be left without a local branch or indeed closing altogether. And that is a tragedy. Well, joining us now is Thorin Govind, who is former chairwoman of the Royal Pharmaceutical Society. Really good to see you, Thorin. It's been a very long time.
Good to see you. You're keeping well, though, I can see. No, I haven't seen a pharmacist in a while, right?
Well, no, I have actually. I have, and I'm very keen, as you know, that pharmacy first. That's my mantra.
Absolutely.
Good. I'm glad I'm on the right page. I mean, look, pharmacies are absolutely crucial to local communities, rural communities. They literally bind the community together. We've got an increasingly ageing population. We need pharmacists. I do not understand why the government doesn't understand that either.
OK, they want us to do more and more work. And as you quite rightly said there, a lot of people don't know how pharmacies are actually funded. So we work primarily under an NHS contract, which means we are bound by the terms of working with the NHS. And many of the drugs that we order into the pharmacy, we don't actually get the cost of that reimbursed to the pharmacy. So many people don't know that pharmacy owners are subsidising the NHS.
Yeah.
So quite rightly here, you've got the National Pharmacy Association have done a survey of some of their members, and it's not surprising to me that many of them are considering moving. 55% of those surveyed are considering moving, and 48% are considering closing, because it's not really that viable to be working in pharmacy and trying to keep the doors open, really.
Well, no, absolutely. If your cost base is going up and yet your income is staying static, it doesn't make any sense.
No, and we want to be doing more and more to support people. And we've talked before about the variety of services which are now available. And it's taken a while for the NHS to recognise the value of community pharmacists on the high street, often open late hours into the evenings and weekends. So things like Pharmacy First, which is a scheme now where we can provide more support to people, are fantastic. Right now, infected insect bites, heat waves, everyone's been out there. That's one of the Pharmacy First schemes that we can support with. But I just don't think people recognise the value enough of the pharmacies on the high street, but they will see how hard it is if they disappear.
Yeah, well, Andy Burnham, the Prime Minister, has made lowering business rates for businesses a key policy plank this summer. He basically reduced them by 20% for pubs, for clubs, for live music venues. Also, GPs and NHS dentists have their business rates refunded, but pharmacies don't get anything.
No, we work under a different contract when it comes to the NHS. So support for our premises, for example, comes from the pharmacy owners. We don't get NHS pensions. We work under a very different contract to general practice. In the future, what I would like to see is more alignment with those contracts. I'm not talking about pensions and things like that, but sometimes it doesn't make sense how the contracts work. And actually, I think they could be streamlined for patients much better. So it's in patient interests.
I mean, I was reading about Onkar Singh. He runs 20 pharmacies across the Black Country in Staffordshire, in Herefordshire and Worcestershire. His business rates bill has risen 20 to 30%. His total bill is £250,000 now.
And people don't realise there's a lot of pharmacy owners, as you say, who are it's family businesses or individual owners. They've got their whole lives are tied into that pharmacy. So many of them are mortgaged up to the hilt. Many of them, I've talked to pharmacy owners all the time. They just don't take time off. There's a real risk of burnout. I'm also concerned about mental health of owners because they don't get time off at all. It's very much they are in the thick of it in the pharmacy or worrying about how to pay their staff the bills and also to pay for the drugs because they have to pay for the drugs to get them into the building before the NHS pays them.
Oh, so that's interesting. So they have outlay before they get the reimbursement from the NHS. I didn't know that, actually. And also, just in terms of that, it just seems insane to me because the government keeps saying, right, pharmacies are crucial. We're going to push everyone into the pharmacies first, as I mentioned right at the beginning of this interview. And at the same time, we're spending, what, 220 billion quid on the NHS every single year. And yet, they can't understand that if you expect pharmacies to do more and more and more, you're going to have to subsidise them.
Yeah, and look, we are really willing. The workforce is really willing, but we do. I mean, if you go into your pharmacy, I'd really encourage people to actually speak to their pharmacy team as to what's actually going on in their local pharmacy and to support their local pharmacy because it's your support that's going to keep them open. And I think, if you're feeling unwell, you want to be able to walk in, look someone in the eyes, have someone to speak to in that private confidential consultation room. I just think the value is not seen until it's too late. And we have seen pharmacies disappear from our high street and a lot of mergers as well. So you might have had two in one area and actually end up only with one catering for a larger community.
So the numbers are 44 pharmacies have already closed this year. The national network is now the smallest it's been since 2006. And actually, the other thing you and I have discussed before, which is that pharmacists have the time to have a longer consultation than a GP, for example. So particularly with older people who've got multi-system disease, who really need some help, or they want to be talking through some of their medication, whether there are contraindications or whether they actually some adverse reaction. The pharmacist is pivotal in this.
I was actually reading today about a fake doctor, and it's one of the stories, and they found out because some of the pharmacists were looking at the prescriptions that were coming through. And I also think back to the Harold Shipman case. People don't realise what a safeguard pharmacists are in their communities. We are vital at reviewing medication and making sure it's right for you as an individual. And I think people just think, oh, they're just picking up a box off the shelf. Actually, we're a really important safety guard and we work with other healthcare professionals. We might not work in the same building, but we're definitely a team and we are all there in the patient's best interest.
Well, I agree. And also, as a junior doctor, it's the pharmacist who goes through all of your prescriptions in hospitals, checking you haven't made a mistake, that the dosage is right, that you're actually making sure that you're prescribing the right drug, for example.
Absolutely. I mean, I really remember this one case where I had a patient and they were adamant that this prescription should be for them. And in the end, I said, please, I cannot give this to you now. I need to check something. And that medication actually got changed because it wasn't suitable for a child. And I always think back to that scenario. And whenever I have a situation, I always try and explain it to the patient. It's not that often, but I think for me, I'm really proud that I'm able to provide that advice and be that safeguard in the community and to work with other people, and that people know that they can walk in whatever time it is and I will find time to come and see them and we'll figure things out.
Brilliant. Thorin, thanks so much for your time this afternoon. That's Thorin Govin, former chairwoman of the Royal Pharmaceutical Society. Lots of messages coming in. Talk. The split second a child reaches 18, they are a friend and adult. That is, if they are mature enough. This is interesting, actually. I was told by my mum that if you can read, you can do anything, and she was right. I've achieved much through being an avid reader. What Catherine is saying about starting literacy and numeracy are games you play with your baby. I agree, and actually, I think that really developed my learning. I loved reading as a child, absolutely loved it. I wish I had time to do more of it now, apart from reading the news. Oh, this is very nice. Nick in Bolton, thank you for this message. Sorry to see you go again. Well, hopefully it's only temporary. You're my favourite host. You're probably the most even-handed when engaging with callers you may not agree with, and I think that's the most important quality for a host on a talk station. I hope you will consider coming back in a permanent spot in the future. Well, Nick, that's really sweet of you. Thank you very much. I will if producer Finn is nicer to me. And let's also look at some of the other messages coming in. Many of you talking about Catherine Burble-Singh, about what an inspiration she is as a teacher. Nigel's on the line from Portsmouth. Good afternoon.
Hello, David. Yeah, I'll second that last one. It's so good to hear you on the line, on the radio. So good.
Thank you so much. That's really sweet. Very kind.
Basically, the reading mantra. My wife and I are foster carers. I remember the very first child we fostered, he was 7 years old and he couldn't read because basically he'd been brought up addicted to screens. Always had, a massive TV in his room. In the car, his mum would give him a tablet or a phone. And, his behaviour, he's got ADHD, he's got this, that and the other. He basically had a screen detox. 8 months, no screen.
Wow.
So that was no laptop, no phone, no telly, nothing. Instead, we taught him to read. He learned to read so quickly and he loved it. But not just to read, but to read out loud. It was, you need to read out loud for an hour a day. And at the beginning, it was 5 minutes because it was, with a 7-year-old, it was like teaching a 3-year-old to read. Put your finger, each word, just as Catherine Burble-Singh mentioned. Do you know what? That boy, suddenly his ADHD went. Isn't that amazing? So suddenly his behaviour, he was an angel because he could concentrate. He could concentrate. He could look at a book. Do you know what? He would read for 4 hours if we didn't stop him. And I could give him the Bible in Polish. That boy would try to read it. It just changed everything. His teacher were like, wow, this is transformed. You've transformed him. And yeah, she's exactly right what she said. A book can't compete with a screen. It doesn't harm them to have 0 screen time. And when we started to kind of wean him back onto screen, it was watching a TV, sitting next to me or sitting next to my wife, watching old-fashioned things that weren't all whiz, bang, watching Swallows and Amazons, watching The Goonies, watching E.T., which when you look at them, they're really slow films.
It's a brilliant point. It's an utterly brilliant point. The idea, as Catherine said, of some child in a pram with a stand so their screen can go on it. I've seen parents stick their kids in front of screens everywhere. And
the other thing, sorry to interrupt you, David, the other thing that really annoys me, I've seen parents in the supermarket, and I've got children who are 5 or 6 or even 10, and they're saying to them, OK, what do you want for tea tonight? Or, OK, what do you want? No, they didn't. So, and what she said there was exactly right. Our 3 children are all in their 20s, from 24 to 29, all doing amazing stuff. One's a director in a huge art gallery. One's actually on the Green Climate Fund. She's like on the committee, always in South Korea. She's only 24, doing amazing stuff. Now, they are our friends.
Yeah, lovely.
Just early this year, our youngest daughter, she was in South Korea. She flew back for a day to see my wife on her birthday. The next day, flew back to South Korea.
How wonderful. When did they become friends? At what age?
Do you know what? with my son, who's 29, I kind of like to think he was easy. You know, we never really had I never had any kind of behavioural issues with him. He was always kind of on side. One of our daughters, yeah, that was a bit challenging until I guess she left university.
Right.
You know, and basically left university, got a first pay packet, cured of socialism overnight. You know, honestly, those kind of things. But you know, it was a bit hard for a while. My wife's mixed race, so it was all like BLM and stuff when that was going on. And then, you know, she kind of just found the light herself. But yeah, I guess it's during and after university. Once they leave university and get in the real world, I think, yeah, they kind of grow up really, really quickly.
That's a brilliant story. Thank you so much, Nigel. Really good to talk to you this afternoon. Right, let's take a break. We'll do some more calls, thoughts, messages after this break. This is Talk.
We have to stand up to the French. We have to be much tougher. We have to stop. I mean, it is the pull factor is huge, but even without the pull factor, there are going to be people who, you know, want to come across that bit of ocean and come to us. And I just think, once again, you know, we do a lot of talking about it, and Andy Burnham, every time he's interviewed, says, oh yes, but there's fewer boats coming. There may be fewer boats coming, but they're actually bigger boats and they're holding just as many people. I think the money we're giving to France is unbelievably big for what they're doing for us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to the final part of my stint here on Talk for the last 2 weeks I've been here, actually. I have to say that whilst I've been away for the last year or so, I've got really into football, and that's why I'm delighted to say that the Premier League is back. Talk Sport has exclusive live coverage of the first two games on the opening weekend. Now, tonight, champions Arsenal take on newly promoted Coventry City, who return to the Premier League after 25 years away. Kick-off is at 8 o'clock tonight. Then tomorrow at 12:30, Hull City face Manchester United, exclusively live, by the way, on Talk Sport. Plus, Talk Sport will bring you full analysis and opinion from all 10 opening fixtures throughout the weekend. So there you are. You can tune over to our sister channel, Talk Sport. Right, let's take some calls. Graham's on the line from Wokingham. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, David. How are you?
Yeah, all right, thanks very much indeed. What would you like to talk about?
Well,
it's really about benefits and, in particular, mobility.
Okay.
First of all, we need to draw a straight line between mobility allowance and Motability.
Okay, explain.
Motability is a leasing company.
Correct.
Mobility allowance is an allowance to people with different challenges to be able to get around, work, using vehicles, etc.
Yeah.
Now, the money we give to people on mobility allowance, they could just go and lease any vehicle from anywhere.
Yes.
It's been beneficial to get it from Motability, who, for the fact is, they have 262,000 cars every year they change.
Right.
That's the number. Now, the government has now put VAT and insurance taxes onto Motability.
Mm.
This means that anybody receiving mobility allowance has effectively had the purchasing power of their higher mobility allowance reduced.
Right.
Yeah, that's the first thing. Now, we could actually turn around and say the upfront costs, and I mean a lot of the time to get a car like a Jazz, you would have to pay £1,200 up front that you'll never get back.
Right, wow.
We could say, if you lease a car which is 50% or more built in the UK, then you won't have to pay the upfront allowance. What this would then do would be to force the demand for UK-built cars up, which would then increase the amount of jobs we had in the UK, the amount of tax we could pull in, and development of the car industry again in this country.
That's a great idea.
And of course, it's money that we're paying anyway, so it might as well stay in the country as go outside. The circular flow of income.
Okay.
From my days of having to suffer economics.
What about if you said you could only lease British cars?
Well, from somebody like myself who I've got cerebral palsy, I can't find enough really at the moment. But yes.
What do you mean find enough? Because the car isn't suitable?
No, there aren't enough British cars made.
Yeah.
And politicians have said, go back to the old three-wheelers. Well, you can't get a resale value on an old three-wheeler.
I haven't seen one for years.
Yeah. So that's a bit of naivety. And also, I would like to say I'm not the wrong side of 16 stone, but I am. Getting out of a three-wheeler would probably pull the thing over. Now, I also have a situation is, they say get smaller cars. Well, I can get in a small car. Getting out of the damn thing with cerebral palsy is not so great.
No,
now,
absolutely.
I'm going to tell you, I'm exceptionally lucky. It's affected my legs, yeah,
right.
And a little bit of some logic with things like spelling and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I've been exceptionally lucky. And that's one of the things that your head teacher said. You look at what you've got.
Yeah.
Not what you haven't got. And, I mean, I qualified as a bookkeeper. I'm now a musician around care homes.
Amazing.
And I'm clocking up towards 70 and wondering why the hell my new driving licence hasn't arrived. But that's another matter.
Right.
We were talking about the inefficiency of government, weren't we, earlier?
Oh, yes. Well, there are a lot of examples, aren't there?
Yeah, well, it's spelt with a capital D, isn't it? Efficiency.
Yeah, that's very good, actually. Very droll.
Now, what we should be looking at is how we spend the money in the sense of can we keep it in the community, building jobs through the benefits that we pay out.
Yep.
Anybody on benefits, we should be looking at how to encourage them to have faith in themselves. I mean, Katie Hopkins, for instance, she's got faith in herself, hasn't she?
Certainly she has, yes. I mean, that's putting it gently.
And we should be looking to say, we had brilliant people, what was his name? Labour MP who was deaf.
David Blunkett. No, he's blind. Who was deaf?
and he was a fantastic supporter of people with disabilities.
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant point, actually. Not only that, but reinvigoration of industry in this country, but also saying to people who are less able, let's put it that way, that actually you can achieve great things if you have the right support. I think it's a brilliant message. Graham, thank you very much indeed. Jackie's on the line from Gravesend. Good afternoon.
Oh, hello, David.
Oh, hello, Jackie. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good.
Right. Oh, yes, it was a little while ago. I was phoned up. Right,
I'm sorry.
I was going to... These no, that's all right. You know, these restore people that you kept having on, a couple of them, and honestly, and that one who said, "Oh, I used to be in the BNP."
Yes, he did. Yes.
I mean, he said a long time ago. I thought, yeah, I bet you did, mate. They're a bunch of nasty racists. These are people, and he's talking about the time. You know, the BNP. That was no joke. They were real facts. You know, Hitler worshippers, they used to march up and down with swastikas. So people like that gives you... And a lot of them, I think that's what Restore attracts. And they're also, if you notice, every one of them that phoned you up, like that woman, they're obsessed with Zia Yusuf. Now, I wonder what it could be.
And what are you saying? Because he's brown?
Because he's brown, yes. Yeah. And from what I've heard of all these other ones, they're horrible. And they're like, what's the other thing they talk about? Ethno-nationalism.
They do, yes.
I mean, yes. And I think, you know, I mean, you're a nice, polite man, but, you know, you should take them up on this and say, and when you scratch the surface, what they want is to, you know, deport anybody who isn't pure white. You know,
I mean, I think it's pretty outrageous, isn't it? Despicable. Well, and also, I mean, you know, look, we've had this conversation before about when are you truly British? Well, for me, if you're born in this country, you're British. End of story.
Absolutely. And you know, I've got lots of friends, relatives, you know, and I think, how dare you horrible people start talking about ethno-nationalism, which Reform never does. And
well, it never will, actually. It would never do that, because that's not Reform's mantra or what it believes in.
Absolutely not. And when they slug off Nigel Farage as saying, oh, he's like a Tory, and I think you want to have a look at that Rupert Lowe. I mean, he's a former Tory.
Yeah.
I've never trusted him, to be honest, since he joined. And I did. I said to my husband, I reckon he's a fifth columnist. He's in there to stir up, do a lot of stirring, where you know, at intervals. And I think probably Reform has still got people like that in there that are just waiting to do it.
Well, Jackie, I'm so sorry to cut you off, but very strong points there about Restore and about Reform. Right, next up, Trevor O'Sullivan.
Trevor, yeah, I'm really getting fed up with this nonsense.
Well, I don't even know why I was told to say that.
It's Jeremy Kyle thinks it's hilarious.
Oh,
because
right.
2 days